2 worlds I studied at Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51: How to Practice the Petrification Spell. Cedric not only reminded Moon about the research direction, but Sprout also stopped him when the party was about to end. I think Cedric has already told you. Do you have any ideas about the next direction? Not yet, Professor. Moon was telling the truth this time. He made the wand to test whether magic can be used in Xilin. Now that magic has been proven to be usable, he plans to learn some spells or transfiguration to deal with the next war. But thinking that there may be many ancient magical plants in another world, Moon wanted to explore again. You don't have to worry. Wand making has actually reached the top in terms of magical plants. It won't have much result if you work on it. In fact, Sprout's statement is also Moon's current real situation. He successfully knocked on the door of the club with a difficult wand. But at the same time, it also increased the difficulty of his next research by several levels. For example, Cedric joined the club because he discovered a sleepy face mushroom. In the next few years, he only needs to study this little mushroom. There is also Bernard Vincent. He joined because he grew snail grass and found that it can be used to make adhesives. Then he just needs to continuously improve the purity of the adhesive. If Moon follows the path of making wands, it is nothing more than changing the material of the wand body or the wand color. But this has been done by someone long ago, and they have been doing it for more than 2,000 years. Even if Moon now has twice as much time as ordinary people, it is impossible to catch up with the Ollivander family in his lifetime. Of course, Moon actually has another direction to choose. It is the ancient magical plants in another world. But Moon does not plan to reveal this at this stage. After all, it is likely to involve his secrets. He can trust Neil, but he needs to think about the people in this world again. However, the study of herbal knowledge cannot be left behind. If he can find herbs that can be used to make potions in Xilin, it will also be helpful for Moon to deal with the war. As for the next direction of herbal research, Moon still needs some time to consider. After the club meeting, Moon returned to the common room and found Hermione, who was reading a book. He returned to Hogwarts this time mainly to learn some spells to deal with the war. The petrification spell that Hermione has been practicing recently has become Moon's first choice. You want to learn the petrification spell? After hearing Moon's request, Hermione looked over in confusion. In Hermione's mind, Moon had just completed the wand making and even joined the professor's club because of it. Now is the time for him to study hard on herbs and plants. But Moon wanted to learn this spell that was not on the curriculum, which made her a little confused. Yes, I saw you practicing, so I want to ask you. Moon's attitude was very sincere. Hermione nodded and agreed after just thinking about it. The petrification spell comes from the second-year textbook standard course of spells, level 2, of Hogwarts. Among the first-year freshmen, Hermione should be the only one practicing it. After all, no little wizard would learn the content of the second year in advance. Although this spell is also a primary spell, it is more difficult to master. Hermione seemed to have the potential to be a professor by nature. Her teaching style completely follows the meticulousness of Professor Flitwick and the rigor of Professor McGonagall. Professor Flitwick will explain the history of each spell in class to inspire the imagination of young wizards. Professor McGonagall will meticulously point out what should be paid attention to in every step of magic and what harm will occur if it is violated. So this time, Moon personally experienced a feeling of two professors teaching at the same time. The petrification spell was first spread from ancient Greece, where the myth of Medusa has always been circulated. Hermione is really suitable to be a professor. This is the most true voice of Moon after listening to the history of the petrification spell. It turns out that wizards want to achieve the petrification effect of Medusa's eyes through magic. But no matter how hard they try, they can't turn the cursed person completely into stone. The petrification spell created can only make the cursed person's muscles stiffen all over the body, unable to move like stone. This is also very powerful, isn't it? Hermione did not forget to praise the ability of this spell while teaching. That's right, Moon agreed very much. In his opinion, if the petrification spell can really turn people into stone, then this spell would not appear in the second grade textbook. After all, turning a person into stone is almost the same as killing someone. Especially in school, there will always be little wizards who will inevitably use spells to play tricks on their classmates. Knowing the history of the petrification spell, I think you should be able to master the method of reciting the spell. Pet, re, fi, custu, ta. Lose the stress is at the end of these two phrases, and the recitation must be smooth and coherent. Hermione's teaching method is very direct. Moon memorized the pronunciation rules of the spell after only practicing 3 times. Okay, it seems that you really memorized all the modern magic pronunciation table. Thinking of Moon's extraordinary memory, Hermione curled her lips and continued. After mastering the spell, it is the training of wand gestures. Hold the wand firmly with your thumb and index finger. Make sure the tip of the wand is facing up, and then rotate it to the right. Yes, when the palm is facing up, make sure the wand is level with the ground, and then add a diagonal downward forward stabbing action. Hermione broke down the 2 sets of gestures into simple movements, and Moon completed a perfect replica of the movements in 1 try. Your wand waving is much faster than learning spells. Hermione was really surprised by Moon's learning speed of waving the wand. She practiced this movement for a class a week ago before mastering it. Moon also discovered this, but he knew it was not a talent. The perfect segmentation exercises when he made the wand strengthened the strength and direction of his hand movements. This is another benefit Moon got after learning how to make wands. Really? I think so, Moon responded modestly, and Hermione sighed, then turned around and took out a small piece of pottery from her backpack. Professor Flitwick said it's best not to practice on living things at first, and suggested that I use this kind of old pottery. Hermione said as she took out her wand and pointed it at the pottery. The petrification spell came out immediately, but Moon didn't see any signs. After reciting the spell, Hermione took the pottery to the table and let it fall freely. Snap! A little bit of the pottery fell off, but the whole thing was intact. This is the petrification spell I've been practicing for a week, Hermione said as she picked up the pottery back and pushed it down again. Snap! This time the pottery broke directly into 3 pieces. I can only keep the spell going for 30 seconds now. Watching Hermione put the broken pottery pieces together, Moon also understood why Professor Flitwick suggested practicing with this kind of old pottery pieces. First of all, pottery pieces can be found in Hogwarts and are very easy to obtain. Secondly, it can allow people to intuitively see whether the spell is effective. Taking the pottery pieces handed over by Hermione, Moon began to practice. Snap! The pottery broke. Pick up the larger piece of the broken pieces and try again. Snap! It still broke. Pick up the smaller piece. Snap! It still broke. Seeing that Moon failed in 3 attempts, Hermione breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing that he failed in 3 attempts, Moon stopped casting the spell and reviewed the actions and spells just now. In less than a minute, he took the pottery pieces handed over by Hermione again, waved the wand and recited the spell, petrified. Boom. There was a heavy sound on the ground, and the sound was like a solid stone rather than a thin piece of pottery. How did you do it? Seeing Moon picking up the pottery shards without any debris falling off, Hermione's voice was a little tearful. Chapter 52, Alternative Method of Learning Small Evil Curses. Moon didn't know how to answer Hermione's question. Fortunately, the petrification spell he cast on the pottery soon lost its effect, which gave Moon a topic to talk about. You see, it doesn't last as long as your spell. Moon was telling the truth. It was only about 10 seconds from the end of his spell to the second pottery shard falling and breaking. Hermione's spell lasted more than 30 seconds, which was 3 times longer than his. Practice slowly. Hermione took a deep breath, threw down a sentence, picked up a big book and left directly. Moon didn't say anything to stop her. He found that Hermione's footsteps were heavy, as if she had something on her mind. It was already 10 o'clock in the evening, and the students around him returned to the dormitory to rest. Moon enjoyed being alone very much. He picked up the pottery shard that had been in 2 halves and continued to practice. The next morning, Moon was still the first to arrive in the common room. After practicing the spell for 2 hours, his roommates came out. Moon, you are wrong to do this. Ron looked at the pottery shards that had been broken all over the floor and wailed. That's right. Wood asked us to get up at 7 o'clock on the weekend to practice, and I can't do it at all, Harry echoed. Since he came to Hogwarts, he has never gotten up before 8 o'clock. But as the Quidditch event approached, he had to respond to the call of Captain Wood and take more time to practice every day. Actually, if you want to get up early, I can provide a wake-up service, free of charge. Goodbye. I finally left home. I don't want to experience my mother's wake-up service again, Ron often complained about his strange wall clock in his dormitory. According to him, there are 9 golden hands on this wall clock, representing each member of the family. There is no specific time scale on the clock face, only some places and things to do. Among them are various icons such as home, school, work, lost people, getting off work, sleeping, etc. As long as the pointer moves to the corresponding position of the icon, Mrs. Weasley can know the specific movements of each person. What Ron hates most is that his pointer moves to the scale of getting up, because then Mrs. Weasley will call his name over and over again. Ron has complained more than once that the pointer is definitely moving fast. Harry couldn't understand Ron's feelings at all. His alarm clock at Uncle Vernon's house was his uncle and aunt knocking on the wooden door of the stair compartment. And there were threats and urgings over and over again. Because of this, he enjoyed the time of staying in bed in the morning when he came to Hogwarts. But now Wood asked him to get up early to practice Quidditch, so he had to consider how to eliminate the bad habit of pressing the alarm clock casually in the morning. Well, if Wood asks for extra practice in the morning, I will remind you to wake me up the next day. Harry gave a good way to sleep in and not miss Quidditch practice. Moon didn't care about these. Anyway, in his opinion, waking someone up was just walking 2 steps. Seeing Ron standing aside and still dozing off, Moon had to wake him up again. Ron, I said last time that I wanted to learn the little curse, do you remember? You're not kidding, are you? Hearing Moon's question, Ron woke up instantly. He never thought that someone would want to learn the little curse specifically. Especially someone like Moon who wanted to study every day. Yes, I remember you mastered several minor jinxes, of course. Hearing Moon's praise, Ron naturally agreed. In his opinion, among all the first-year students, no, including the second-year students, no one knows more about minor jinxes than him. As for the third year and above, that is the world of his twin brothers. Under Moon's consultation, Ron listed the 5 minor jinxes he mastered: Bat Spirit Curse, Front Teeth Like a Stick, Tarantella Dance, Tickling Curse, Hot and Spicing. Ron's talent may have been misjudged. Not only can he recite these minor jinxes, but he can also tell which one is the most effective when used. These are all experiences. Moon didn't know where these experiences came from. Anyway, on the way to the hall for dinner, Ron kept introducing them excitedly. Minor jinxes seem to be naturally attractive to young wizards. Many people gathered around the Gryffindor table at breakfast time. Among them were first-year students from Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw. After listening to the lesson, they also provided 2 minor jinxes that Ron didn't know: Leg-Locking Curse, Harry Curse. After learning the effects of the 2 spells, Ron was very happy to exchange them with the other party. It was not until the class time was approaching that the little wizards surrounding Ron had to leave. However, the influence of the minor jinx continued to expand. After a full day of classes, Moon finished his transfiguration homework in the library and hurried back to the lounge. Ron was surrounded by little wizards, which was rare. Gryffindor first-year students, including Lavender Brown and Parvati Patil from the girls' dormitory, actually wanted to learn the minor jinx. Even Hermione was sitting not far away. Moon found that although she had a book in front of her, her ears were concentrating on listening to what Ron said. Oh, Moon is back, we can officially start. Seeing Moon coming in from behind the portrait, Ron couldn't wait to walk up. After greeting everyone, Ron immediately started his first teaching. Don't be nervous, don't be so strict, relax, who cares about the origin and history, as long as it works well. Ron's teaching was completely out of the curriculum. He didn't talk about the origin of the spell, the pronunciation rules of the spell, and even asked people to be more casual when swinging the wand. That's right, just remember its general movements. Imagine the miserable state of the other party after being cursed. This is the most important thing. Until Ron said this, Hermione, who was sitting next to him, finally couldn't help it. Ron, spells should be strict. Waving the wand should be standardized. The attitude should be correct. In Hermione's view, Ron was completely irresponsible and giving random orders. Hermione, this is my territory. Seeing Hermione making trouble, Ron issued an order to expel her. This is the common room, and you have been teaching for an hour, but no one has learned it. Doesn't this mean that there is a problem? This can only mean that there is a lack of people to practice with, Ron argued. Okay, then I'll do it, Hermione just agreed angrily, and suddenly there was a sound from the table next to her. Clang clang clang. A wooden stick figure danced on the table. This was the first minor evil spell that Moon learned tonight, Tarantella Dance. You see, My teaching method is not wrong. Seeing the stick figure dancing non-stop, Ron looked at Hermione proudly. The little witch took a few deep breaths and sat back to her original position silently. Moon ignored the quarrel between the two. He kept observing the stick figure on the desk. Although the method of learning minor evil spells is very alternative, it is very easy to master. You don't need to understand the principles behind the spells. Just follow the general movements and practice continuously to master it quickly. And the duration of the minor evil spell is much longer than that of the petrification spell. It was not until a minute later that Parvati and Lavender also made the stick figure dance on the table, and the effect of Moon's minor evil spell gradually disappeared. Asking for the Little Wizard's follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets. Chapter 53 Feeling, Leg Locking Curse. The small evil spells are easy to learn, have a long duration, and are simple and easy to learn. With these advantages, Moon is very willing to invest more energy in this type of spell. Now, apart from attending classes and completing the homework on time, the rest of his time is fully arranged. Read 1,000 magical herbs and fungi for an hour. This book is a common textbook for herbal medicine and potion classes, and it is also a model for Moon's plan to find herbs in Xilin. Then practice the petrification spell for an hour. Although this spell has a short duration and slow progress, it is the strongest spell Moon has mastered. As for the remaining 2 to 3 hours, Moon used them all to practice the small evil spells. In terms of learning small evil spells, Moon is completely different from others. Seamus, Lavender and others did not continue to practice after learning the small evil spells. They think that this kind of teasing spell is enough as long as they learn it. Even Ron gradually lost interest in teaching. In his opinion, there are not so many people supporting him, so there is no need to persist. But Moon was different. He would practice alone in the corner of the common room every day. Perhaps because he couldn't bear to see Moon's persistence, Ron also called in external help. Friend of the 6-time champion, I didn't expect you to like these little things. That's right, I thought that the crybaby little Ron had gotten into trouble and asked us to guarantee it. The speaker was Ron's twin brother, who was also Ron's enlightenment mentor in the small evil spell. After Ron explained, Moon realized that the two famous seniors were actually here to guide him to learn the small evil spell. After thanking the 3 red-haired little wizards, he directly asked about the problem he was facing now. When I practice the leg locking spell, I always can't lock both legs at the same time. This problem has troubled Moon for a whole day, and he couldn't solve it even after practicing more than a dozen times. In front of the 3 people, after Moon demonstrated it once, George walked up with a frown. Is this how you practice the leg locking spell? He picked up the stickman on the desk, which was Moon's practice object. That's right. After each spell, I will check its legs to see if the spell is effective. No, this direction is completely wrong. Fred also came forward. He looked at the stickman, then at Moon. Finally, his eyes were fixed on Ron. Little Ron, do you know why your little evil spell is not as proficient as mine and George's, and why it lasts longer? Ron showed an impatient expression on his face when he heard this question. In his opinion, the twins were called just to help Moon solve the problem. But if the twins also lectured him, he would definitely not admit it. Just talk about Moon's problem, why bring me along? Oh, it seems that crybaby little Ron doesn't want to know the secret, George teased, and Ron's face turned red, and then he and Fred laughed together. Okay, I will reveal the ultimate secret of magic to the 2 gentlemen. Fred leaned forward slightly as he spoke, and Ron and Moon also moved closer involuntarily. That's because we practice on each other. Moon had never thought of the solution Fred gave. Because since entering Hogwarts, every professor has made a strict statement. No experimentation with spells on any students, but the twins not only violated this rule, but also seemed very proud of such an experience. If you don't feel the power of the minor evil spell yourself, how can you imagine the miserable state of your opponent after being hit? Yes, I still remember the first time I was hit by, grinning hula la. The itching all over my body made me unable to sleep all night, and me, after being hit by Soft Leg's curse, I crawled to class, and I even missed my flying class because of it. The twins were very proud to show off their glorious experience to the 2 little wizards, which made Moon completely unexpected. Imagine the miserable state of the cursed person. This was one of the methods Ron used when teaching minor evil spells the day before yesterday. Now it seems that this method is completely inherited from the crazy twins in front of him. But if this method is really useful, then getting cursed seems to be a shortcut to learning minor evil spells. I want to try the leg-locking curse. After thinking it through, Moon boldly put forward his idea. Moon's statement made the twins' eyes light up. They came over and patted Moon on the shoulder as if they had found their own kind. You can do it. Yes, the effect of my spell can only last for 2 hours. 2 hours is completely acceptable to Moon. In particular, the leg-locking curse is very suitable for his requirements for dealing with the Xilin war next. This is also the reason why he wants to master the spell as soon as possible. Walking to the velvet sofa in the lounge, Moon sat down and signaled Fred to cast the spell. I hope Percy doesn't show up. After Fred said this, the wand pointed directly at Moon. There was no fancy effect. When Fred finished reciting the spell, Moon's legs were immediately tightly together. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't open them. Don't sit here all the time. You'd better move, so that you can really feel the misery of the cursed. George came over and sat next to Moon and put forward his own suggestions. Okay, Moon stood up with the help of Fred and started the activity. After his legs were locked, Moon found it very difficult to jump forward. Because his legs could not exert force, and his entire soles were parallel to the ground, he could not use force, and his jumping appearance was particularly strange. In order not to attract other people's attention, Moon chose to jump directly back to the dormitory and then move around in the dormitory. Dong 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 dong. When Bengbeng saw Moon jumping back, his little head tilted to one side. Chi, did you pick up the shiny treasure? No. Chi, then why are you jumping too? Because I'm experimenting with magic. Chi, then you don't look as good as me when you jump. Moon did not answer Bengbeng's last sentence. The distance back to the dormitory has made him truly feel the power of the leg-locking curse. The feeling after being cursed is not that the legs are tied with ropes. Instead, the entire muscles, bones, and meridians are firmly blocked. It's like an unknown force completely wrapped around the legs, and not a bit of strength can be used. After Moon returned to the dormitory, Ron soon followed. Sorry, I never meant to put you under a spell. It's okay, and it was my own request. Well, if there's anything inconvenient for you to do, you can tell me and I can help you. Ron's guilt didn't last long. The spell, which Fred had estimated would take 2 hours, disappeared without a trace in less than an hour. Ron thought the twins had deceived him again, but Moon didn't think so. He could still vaguely feel that the magic effect still existed, but the power was not as strong. I wonder if it would be the same if other spells were cast on me. I'm asking for follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from the Little Wizard. Chapter 54, Magical Power Growth. Regarding the duration of the spell, Moon was not in a hurry to test it on himself again. Besides, he didn't want to feel the powerlessness after being cursed again. After his legs were no longer bound, he used the stickman to cast the leg-locking spell again. This time, no matter how hard Moon tried, the legs of the stickman were firmly fixed, without any sign of separation. In the end, the spell lasted for more than 10 minutes. It seems that George and Fred didn't play a trick on me. Feeling it in person can really improve the ability to cast spells. Moon, who had learned new knowledge, couldn't help but try it on the stickman a few more times. After confirming that the effect of the leg-locking spell really improved, he returned to the dormitory to rest. On Friday morning, after Moon finished practicing the spell, he took the time to preview the content of today's potion class. Snape's class must be fully prepared. This is one of the most useful conclusions Moon has drawn since the start of school. Fortunately, Moon has finished reading 1,000 magical herbs and fungi this week, and the only thing he needs to preview is magic potions and potion. It was enough for Moon to just preview the content of the day's class. Because except for the first potion class, Professor Snape had never asked Moon questions beyond the syllabus. Of course, this range excluded Harry. Harry, who had been training Quidditch for a month, hated potion class the most. Every Friday, all he could do was endure the humiliation. As long as he could get through the potion class, it was as happy as catching a golden snitch during training. Quidditch was very important to Harry, in addition to helping him relieve the pain of potion class. The wizard bar on his head would grow a little after each Quidditch training. Now his wizard bar has grown by 1/3. As for Neville, after he smoothly passed 3 potion classes, his bar also grew by 1/3. And Neville has now found his favorite subject, herbology. In fact, Neville's performance in herbology has been very good since the beginning of the school year, but Moon's performance is more eye-catching, which makes many people not notice him. In the herbology class on Wednesday, Neville was rewarded with 1 point by Professor Sprout for transplanting the hemostatic ras independently. It was also on that day that Neville's wizard bar increased significantly. And Seamus seemed to like a very alternative magic path. Ever since Neville's potion accident, Seamus liked the feeling of the explosion of fire. Especially after Professor Flitwick explained the fire magic, he began to study the relevant knowledge. This research also affected his normal schoolwork. Now he is scolded in every spell class. He was even scolded by Professor Flitwick as a monkey waving a big stick because his wand emitted fire when he was learning the locking curse, the counter curse of the unlocking curse. However, amid these flames and explosions, Seamus' wizard bar also increased by 1/3 of a grid. As for Ron, after completing the teaching of the minor jinx, his wizard bar finally changed. Now it has increased to 1/4 of a grid. This change further confirmed Moon's guess that Ron must have a high talent in minor jinxes. As for Moon himself, his wizard bar has surpassed everyone in the second echelon. Malfoy, Michael Corner, Susan Bones and the others have just surpassed half a bar. Moon has almost reached 3/4, and only Hermione is ahead of him. However, Moon observed carefully and found that the gap was not very large. Unlike Hermione's wizard bar, which grows steadily, Moon's wizard bar grows fast and slow. In addition to a significant improvement when making a wand, Moon's wizard bar grows slowly every day. After careful observation of the people around him during this period, Moon roughly summarized the reasons for the growth of wizard bars. The first is learning, including reading and attending classes seriously. The most representative example is Hermione. The second is practice, especially long-term and multiple practice of magic. After accumulating to a certain level, the wizard bar will also change. For example, Moon's daily spell practice and wand making. The last one is talent. Discovering your own talent and making use of it can also make the wizard bar grow. For example, Harry's flying skills, Ron's little curse, and Seamus's weird explosion magic. Moon wrote down the methods he summarized one by one in his notebook. These are the directions for him to improve his magic power. The day after returning to Xilin from Hogwarts, Xilin came to Neil's house. The man was still fully armed with bows and arrows, matchlocks, daggers, and the big yellow dog. Fortunately, the man arrived in Xilin at night, otherwise Moon doubted whether the sheriff on the street during the day would have arrested him and put him in jail. "Little Moon, we meet again." Xilin gave Moon a big bear hug as soon as he entered the house. The experience of the two of them looking for magical trees on the Black Iron Mountain last time made them more familiar with each other. "I heard from your uncle that killing a night owl is incredible. It's not killed, it just fainted, and the man was injured." Moon was not used to Xelin's praise, and said it in a matter-of-fact way. "That's also remarkable. You are the second person here who survived the night owl." Only after getting familiar with Xilin, you can find that he is actually very talkative, and even has the potential to be a chatterbox. The second one. Then who is the first one? As soon as Moon asked the question, Xilin raised his thumb and pointed at himself proudly. "Of course it's me, this I is." Xilin wanted to continue, but Neil suddenly appeared and interrupted him. "Xilin Knight, don't you think Moon is still very young? He is not suitable to listen to these now." Okay." Xilin didn't look at Moon again until he saw Neil walking away. "I think your uncle protects you too well, which is very bad." Moon didn't respond to Xelin's words. In fact, he really enjoys the care of his elders, but he also has a vague idea of proving himself in his heart. Xilin was hired by Neil to take care of all the military families nearby. From that day on, this person who claimed to be the only one who survived the night owl lived in the kitchen of Neil's house. During the day, he stayed quietly at the entrance of the alley, not allowing any strangers to enter, and returned to the kitchen to sleep at night. As for the big yellow dog he brought, it became a playmate for the children in the alley. Especially his cousin Sophia, who fell in love with this fierce-looking but cute animal from the first day she saw the big yellow dog. In addition to watching over everyone in the alley, Xilin paid more attention to Moon's movements. When the man who went out to buy supplies every day came home and didn't need his care, Xilin would stay with Moon. Even though 3 days had passed, he was very curious about how Moon escaped from the hands of Night Owl. "Don't worry, don't think I talk a lot. In fact, it's only for people you can trust." Moon agreed with Xelin's words. After staying at the entrance of the alley for 3 days, the man never said a word to anyone else. Thinking about the other party's identity, Moon dispelled his doubts and spoke slowly. "Actually, I'm a spellcaster, Spellcaster. Did your uncle say that you can't feel magic? That was just me before, seeking follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from the Little Wizard. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55, Different Magic Training. If Moon has someone he trusts the most, it must be Neil. As Moon's uncle in name, Neil has actually done what a father should do in the past 11 years. Even Moon's trust in Xilin was based on Neil's judgment. Recently, the price level in Xilin town has begun to rise. Originally, 1 silver coin could buy 10 kilograms of rye, but now it can only buy 5 kilograms, and there is a purchase limit. Even though the alley just bought a batch of food yesterday, no one can say how long the war will last. So before dawn, all the adults in the alley went out to line up to buy food. After the adults in the family left, Xilin became the guardian of all the children in the alley. It was precisely because of this that Moon dared to reveal a little secret to the other party. Are you saying that this little light is magic? Looking at the white light flashing at the tip of Moon's wand, Xilin asked with a face full of doubt. Yes, this is the luminescent spell, silver light spell? What's the difference between this and my torch? Xilin didn't care. In his opinion, magic should be something that human power cannot do. Moon's spell could only illuminate the area 3 meters away, which made him somewhat disappointed. Seeing the expression on Xilin's face, Moon also had a desire to show off. Then you can try this, leg-locking spell. When the willow wand pointed at Xilin, the man who had just been laughing at Moon lost his balance and fell to the ground. When Moon was about to go over to help him up, Xilin exclaimed, "Oh, awesome! This is magic." Xilin did not look at all the pain that a cursed person should have. After feeling his legs unable to move, he was actually a little excited. The shouting in the kitchen spread to the yard. After Neil comforted Aunt Daisy and Cousin Sophia, he walked into the kitchen alone. Seeing Xilin lying on the ground, Neil hurried over and helped him to the chair. "Moon," I said, "you shouldn't show this. Come on, Neil, this thing should be exercised instead of hidden." "Bah," Xilin said something and spit out the firewood he had just eaten when he fell. "He's only 11 years old, Xilin." Neil frowned and looked at Xilin. In his opinion, Moon should be the one being protected now. What's wrong with 11 years old? Doesn't Night Owl kill 11-year-old children? Xilin's words left Neil speechless. He never wanted to mention the name Night Owl, even though the name was so close to Xilin now. Night Owl, it's an adult's business. Okay, Warrant Officer Neil, I know what you're going to say. You have to go a long way to buy food tomorrow. Go to bed early. This is my home, not the army. Colonel, Warrant Officer Neil, are you going to disobey orders? Xilin's tone was not heavy, but Neil finally gave in. He glared at him fiercely and turned away. Looking at Neil's back, Moon wanted to say something, but he couldn't say a word. "Okay, kid, your uncle will figure it out. Untie my legs first." "I can't do it, no." "How long will I be trapped then?" "I think it won't be more than 10 minutes. 10 minutes, that's good." 10 minutes later, the leg-locking curse still hadn't been untied. 20 minutes later, it still hadn't been untied either. At this point, Xilin had become irritable. Moon was also a little panicked. He estimated the duration of the spell based on what he had learned after casting the spell at Hogwarts. At that time, the target of his spell was a stick figure. And it only lasted 10 minutes at most. But now the target of the spell is a living person. There's no reason for it to last more than 10 minutes. When Moon was moving Xilin's legs, he looked at the wand beside him. He guessed that the reason might be this wand. After a full hour, Moon's hands were sore from massaging, and Xilin's legs gradually regained consciousness. This magic is really cool. The next day, half of the adults in the alley stayed. It's not that they don't need to go shopping anymore, but everyone pooled their money and handed it to the 8 people headed by Neil. They were going to Bengbeng City, which was further south, to buy some cheap food while the situation there was not tense. Xilin was supposed to go to Bengbeng City together, but he rejected Neil's request and found himself a leisurely job instead, spellcaster guidance. This was the title of the position that Xilin gave himself after he had a big fight with Neil. As for the person being guided, it was naturally Moon. "How did you convince Neil?" Walking on the way to the hazelnut forest cabin, Moon looked at Xilin curiously. Convince? No, your uncle actually knows everything, but he just doesn't want you to take risks. Moon could understand Neil, but he actually wanted to prove himself. War will definitely come, right? Yes, so you need to master these even more. The farm in winter does not need any protection, so it has become the most suitable place for Moon to practice magic in secret. However, the way of practice this time was completely unexpected by Moon. No. You're too slow. After arriving at the cabin, Xilin and Moon started practicing without a break. However, Moon was scolded at the first step. From the time you reached out to take the stick, to the time you took it out and recited the spell, this time is enough for me to shoot 3 rounds of continuous arrows, and then your body will be full of 9 holes. Xilin was very dissatisfied with Moon's spell casting speed. In order to prove that his statement was correct, he started shooting arrows directly in front of the cabin. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Continuous arrows, 3 arrows each. From taking arrows from the quiver on his back to all 9 arrows hitting the target, Xilin only took less than a breath. See, either you don't let the other party know your intentions, or you must be faster than the other party, so that you can survive. After entering the training, Xilin was like a completely different person. In his eyes, all moves should be fast and fierce enough. But others will definitely not know what I am doing with the stick, and they will not be on guard. Moon agreed with Xilin's statement very much. As long as the opponent did not know his intention, he would definitely win in the end. Just like Night Owl, who fell in the cave, he only thought that Moon was holding a small wooden stick to drive sheep. Of course not now, but you can't be lucky, others will know sooner or later. Xilin's statement was right. Moon did have a lucky thought. But war often does not tolerate luck. So Moon could only practice pulling the stick, swinging the stick, and casting spells over and over again in the next few days. Until he was exhausted and could no longer cast a spell, Xilin allowed him to rest. Do you think weight-bearing exercises will help you improve your magic power? Xilin, who knew little about magic, wanted to help Moon extend the practice time. But he didn't know how to do it, so he could only discuss it with Moon. I don't think it will be of much use. Besides, this trip is more tiring than collecting hazelnuts in the entire forest. Moon told the truth. He had never been so tired. And this kind of tiredness is not only physical, but also mentally exhausting. Okay, then you take a rest first. As for the herbal book you are looking for, I will bring it to you tomorrow. Please read it, vote for it, and recommend it to me. Chapter 56 Comparative Study of Herbs. Learning herbal medicine was something Moon had decided to do a long time ago, but he had never had the channels to do so. This world did not have a very developed printing technology, and paper was not cheap, so books became an expensive luxury. Don't worry, as a forest ranger, I know at least 80 herbal merchants, and they definitely have handwritten copies of this. On the 3rd day after returning to Xilin, Moon received 3 herbal manuscripts as he wished. 2 of them were very new, and the copyists were very serious. The contents were clearly written, and there were also illustrations. The name Canary Pharmacy was written on the title page. Moon knew that this was the largest herbal medicine store in Xilin. As for the last one, it was a completely tattered manuscript. It didn't even have a book cover, and many of the papers were also eaten by insects. The first 2 were given to me by the pharmacy, and the last one was bought from Raoul. Seeing that Moon didn't care much about the tattered books, Xilin continued to explain. The Raoul family has been collecting herbs in the Black Iron Mountain for generations. They learned about the war too late, and the price of food was so high, so I helped them. After these few days of contact, Moon also fully understood Xilin's character. Since he said he would help, it couldn't be as simple as just buying the herbalist's manuscript. He must have spent a lot of money. In fact, you can buy some paper so that I can copy it down and then let them pass the manuscript to future generations. Moon actually liked Xilin's character very much, so after hearing about the other party's difficulties, he also wanted to help. Oh, why didn't I think of it? Xilin said and left the cabin again. Moon opened the manuscript and read it slowly. He had completely memorized thousands of magical herbs and mushrooms. Now all he needed to do was to find the corresponding herbs in Xilin. In this way, he could not only get more learning materials, but also find herbs for making potions. In order to confirm whether a herb meets the requirements, in addition to identifying the picture, it is also necessary to check the text description: silver platform flower, white flowers, shallow cup shape, flat ribbon-shaped leaves, tough, This is very similar to the description of daffodils. Moon marked this paragraph. Antworm vegetable, leaves are opposite, with serrated edges, and male and female flowers. This seems to be hemostatic grass. Before Xilin came back, Moon found 7 or 8 kinds of herbs he learned at Hogwarts. But this still needs the last step to confirm, that is, to see it with your own eyes, or even taste it. You said these things can be used to make potions. Looking at Moon, who is exhausted again because of running out of magic power, Xilin grabbed a sweetgrass root and stuffed it into his mouth. Yes, the thing you ate can be used to make potions to treat burns, Moon replied while lying on the ground, panting. This is amazing. When I was in the army, I only used it as a snack and never thought that it could be used to make potions. It is indeed suitable as a snack. It has a sweet taste and can suppress internal heat if chewed dry. Moon sat up from the ground and looked at Xilin worriedly. But it is not possible to make potions now. Why? Is it difficult to make potions? The sweetgrass that Xilin eats is called evening primrose and thousands of magical herbs and mushrooms. This is one of the ingredients in the burn potion that Moon learned a month ago. However, the most important thing about making this potion is not the difficulty, but the need for a drop of unicorn tears. One of the ingredients in this potion is very difficult to get. Moon said this and unconsciously thought of the magical white horse he met in Snow Eagle Mountain. If his guess is right, it should be a unicorn. I think the Magician Association must have what you need. Seeing that Moon was a little worried, Xilin gave a suggestion. The Magician Association? What is that? Moon, who grew up in Xilin, had never heard of the name Magician Association. He always thought that people who knew magic were called casters or court mages. You don't really think that only the Federation has magicians, do you? That's not the case, Moon answered truthfully. It seems that you are quite smart. In fact, I have only heard about the Magician Association. Xilin seemed to be born for war. He has a strong physique, runs fast, and is proficient in spearmanship, archery, and swordsmanship. He joined the army at the age of 16, became the captain of a 100-man team at the age of 18, and was promoted to the chief officer of a 500-man team at the age of 20. His future should have been brighter. However, it was also at the age of 20 that he met the 10-man team, Night Owl Guard. As you can imagine, he was the only one who survived the 500-man team, and he also lost an eye. It was also after the end of this battle that Moon's father dug him out of the pile of dead bodies. From then on, practicing hard to get revenge became Xelin's only thought. Later, his strength became stronger and stronger, and he was noticed by the top spellcasters of the Federation and became a spellcaster guardian. Until the establishment of the Federation, Xilin found that revenge was hopeless, and finally chose to return to his hometown to become a forest ranger. As for the Magician Association, he also heard about it when he was a spellcaster guardian. In fact, I have only seen the court mages of the Manila Empire. They will be incorporated into the army during wartime. If you meet them, you must stay away from them. Moon had also heard of the name of the court mage. They often appeared in various legends of Xilin. As for the Magician Association, it is called Underground Rats by spellcasters and court mages. I think you should be able to guess their situation. Magicians are called rats. Isn't this a bit ironic? Moon was very surprised. In his opinion, magicians who mastered powerful powers should not be treated like this. Why? Do you think that you can't be treated as rats if you master extraordinary powers? Xilin saw through Moon's thoughts at a glance. Do you know how many spellcasters there are in the Federation? Seeing that Moon was a little indignant, Xilin asked an irrelevant question. It should be not many, Moon guessed. Of course not many, Xilin said, standing up a little excitedly. Since you were born, hundreds of children have been born every year in Xilin and the surrounding villages, but only one child has entered the military academy to study magic. Could it be the little girl who took the test with me? Moon recalled the scene when he was 7 years old and took the test. That year, a little girl named Garona was taken away by the spellcaster of the military academy. That's right. But I'm not saying this to make you recall that little girl. Xilin paused here deliberately, and seeing that Moon didn't react, he shook his head and continued. Don't you find that there are too few people with magical talent? Xilin reminded him, and Moon reacted. There are about 1,000 children born in 11 years, and there is only one with magical talent. 1 in 1,000, yes, it will be even less, and the number of people joining the army will be 100 times this number, but what does it matter? Being a soldier and being a magician do not conflict with each other. Just like spellcasters, they are still studying in the military academy, Whether there is a conflict or not is never decided by one person. When those in power think that magicians are evil, 100 soldiers will be ordered to kill a magician. 100. Moon knew very well that ordinary magicians below this number had no chance of winning. Is this why magicians are called rats? Of course, sometimes everything is decided by those in power, seeking follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from the Little Wizard. Chapter 57, Night Owl, Robbed. If mice have advantages, it must be that they have strong adaptability. In Xilin's words, mice can survive no matter what environment they face. This is also the simplest but true truth he wants to tell Moon. The training for Moon now is to improve his adaptability to survive in any environment. How can we find these hidden magicians? After Xilin's explanation, Moon suddenly felt that he was also a hidden magician mouse. Mice have always been social animals, and Moon inevitably wants to know about their kind. I just heard from Major General Layton that he exchanged some items with the people of the Magician Association. Major General Layton is the senior official of the Federal Army that Xilin once protected, and he is also a spellcaster. Moon was a little disappointed that he could not get accurate information about a magician. However, hearing that the spellcaster would exchange items with the people of the Magician Association made Moon more expectant. Due to his age, Moon's understanding of the current world is far less broad than these organized people. Although he has discovered the big willow tree, the big snake, and the magical white horse, these are only a small part of the magic in this world. He is actually very eager to get more knowledge. And now it seems that the most likely way for him to get this knowledge is through the people of the Magicians Association. I think you should be more or less wary of these people. After seeing Moon's thoughts, Xilin dissuaded him. Why? Moon turned his head and asked curiously. With no concerns, no beliefs, and strength far beyond that of ordinary people, they are destined to be a very dangerous group of people. In Xilin's view, the Magicians Association is a group of people who do not pledge allegiance to the Mad King, and do not obey the orders of the federal archons. They may live in seclusion in the wilderness or in the downtown area. They will do anything to gain magical power. Moon didn't know how to respond to Xilin's opinion. In his opinion, he seemed to fit the image of a magician described by Xilin. Born in the Federation, he would definitely not be loyal to the Mad King. He has not been trained as a spellcaster, so he does not have to obey the orders of the federal archons. The only difference is that he has family and friends to care about. But it's too early to talk about these now, because Moon can't find a hidden magician at all. In the next few days, Moon spent his time training spells and copying herbal atlases. The 3 manuscripts were quickly finished, not because Moon's memory was getting better and better, but because there were a lot of repeated contents in these manuscripts. The original owners of the manuscripts were residents and merchants living nearby, which led to the fact that the herbs they recorded were mostly common varieties in the nearby mountains, and it was inevitable that there would be duplications. After sorting out all the content, a total of 78 herbal entries were obtained. Among them, there were 47 species that could correspond to thousands of herbs and mushrooms. Then after buying them back from the pharmacy for identification, only 31 were found to be exactly the same. Although the proportion was less than half, it was already a good start for Moon. The existence of these herbs not only made it possible for Moon to make potions, it also further confirmed an idea in his mind that this world must have some connection with the world where Hogwarts is located. Okay, stop thinking about it and look at the training targets I found for you. Xilin came back from an outing with 2 large cages. There were 7 or 8 hazel grouse and a dozen red squirrels in each cage. These were all Moon's old neighbors, who stayed in this forest all year round to steal hazelnuts. You caught so many in just one morning? Moon didn't care that Xilin caught these old neighbors. He was surprised that Xilin's hunting speed was too fast. One morning. How is it possible? Xilin put the cage on the ground and went into the house to drink a sip of water. 1 hour to put the bait and 1 hour to take the bait. Moon completely believed that Xilin had been a guard for the military high-level officials. He could catch as many prey as he caught in a month in 2 hours. This was simply a prey killer. I'll put all these little guys in the house later, and you can practice the spell on them. Xilin actually always hoped that Moon could practice on living creatures, and he had very limited time to endure the spell every day, so he found these helpers. The power of the petrification spell is great, but your little evil spell is actually more useful for living things. After observing for a whole day, Xilin came to the current conclusion. The petrification spell has 5 particularly difficult scales, while the leg-locking spell has only 4. In addition, The wand waving of the petrification spell requires 2 sets of different movements to be performed in a coherent manner, while the leg locking spell is just a simple waving twice. In Moon's opinion, these are just 2 tiny differences, but Xilin thinks it is a huge gap. Believe me, if the opponent really has bad intentions, just this tiny difference will make you lie down first. Moon, who has never experienced a real battle, has no say in this matter. All he can do is practice over and over again, and then his magic power is drained, review, and then practice again. On the 7th day in Xilin, Moon fell asleep early after practicing the spell. Xilin stayed beside him all the time. When midnight passed and Moon disappeared, Xilin suddenly turned around and sat up, holding a dagger in his hand. At the same time, 300 miles northeast of Xilin, Lieutenant Colonel Landon Bruce, who had captured Night Owl for a whole week, was furious again in the barracks. Night Owl, who was paralyzed from the waist down, was kidnapped in the middle of the night. During these 7 days, he asked the executioner to use all kinds of torture instruments, but he did not get any useful information. Shortly after Night Owl was kidnapped, the top military officials also came to Lieutenant Colonel Landon's barracks. You lost the prisoner and lost 100 men. If it were wartime, you would have been shot. The one who spoke was Major General Mikhail Liz, the chief military officer of Floating Cloud City. He was responsible for commanding all the military forces of Floating Cloud City, a total of 3 legions and 15,000 people. I am willing to bear any punishment. Lieutenant Colonel Landon put his feet together and saluted the other party. Okay, in this case, I announced the decision of the Floating Cloud City Military Committee, because of the huge mistakes made in the pre-war preparations, which caused serious consequences. Landon Bruce was demoted. After this order is issued, Landon Bruce will be stripped of his rank of lieutenant colonel. He will be appointed as the captain of the 300-man team of the 5th Battalion, the 1st Infantry Regiment under Floating Cloud City. The military committee of Floating Cloud City did not transfer him from the existing troops, but only demoted him by 1 level. This is actually a discretionary treatment of Lieutenant Colonel Landon. After all, the military commanders of Floating Cloud City also know how powerful Night Owl. Lieutenant Colonel Landon, who received the order, was actually secretly glad in his heart. Although he has been demoted to the commander of a team of 100 people, he is far away from the task of hunting down Night Owl. This is already the best solution for him. Please read on. Chapter 58. The day is approaching. For 2 consecutive weeks, Moon has been traveling back and forth between Hogwarts and Xilin Wooden House. During this period, his speed of casting spells has improved from Xilin being able to shoot 3 rounds of arrows to only being able to shoot 1 round. However, the result is no different, because Xilin's arrows can penetrate a half-meter thick tree trunk. If they really fight, Moon will definitely have 3 more holes in his body. In addition to the speed of casting spells, the duration of his spell effects is also constantly extending. In the process of practicing spells again and again, Moon found that his magic power is growing faster. After many personal experiences, Moon felt that the growth rate of the wizard bar should be related to his practice method of casting spells with all his strength every time until all his energy is exhausted. Is practicing with all his strength every time the key to improving magic power? Moon used to think that practicing spells more than practice makes perfect, so that he can achieve the desired magic effect. Now it seems that it is not that simple. Every time the spell is cast to the limit, the body and mind will feel drained. This painful state makes Moon a little scared every time he thinks about it. However, seeing that the wizard bar above his head had reached 3/4 of the grid, Moon's painful heart was slightly comforted. Returning to Hogwarts again, away from Zaren's devilish training, Moon was secretly happy in his heart. But this week, he was not the only one who was happy. Because the festival was approaching, every little wizard had a smile on his face. Especially on the table on Monday morning, most of the students received small toys sent by owls while eating in the restaurant. Skull pendants, bat masks, and pumpkin lantern toys. These are all gifts sent by the elders at home for the little wizards to dress up for Halloween. Seamus received a skeleton figurine sent by his father, Neville received a bat toy made by Uncle Augie, and Ron received a pumpkin lantern hat knitted by his mother. Harry and Moon had nothing, and both of them were concentrating on eating breakfast. When is Halloween? Seeing that Hermione also received a pumpkin lantern-style pencil case, Moon suddenly remembered something. He seemed to have promised Hagrid to help him carve a pumpkin lantern. This Thursday, Hermione replied casually as she transferred all her stationery into a new pencil case. Oh, luckily there's still time. Moon had been practicing spells for the past 2 weeks and almost forgot what he had promised Hagrid. How's your petrification spell going? After transferring the stationery, Hermione looked up at Moon. It can last for a minute. How about you? Moon took a sip of porridge and suppressed the truth in his heart. When he cast the petrification spell on a red squirrel yesterday, it could last for 30 minutes. However, this was achieved with the blessing of the big willow wand. If he used his current wand, it could only last for about 5 minutes. But if he said this length of time, he would definitely be questioned. As the best student in this class, Hermione could only last for 1 minute after practicing the petrification spell for 3 weeks. Thinking of this, Moon thought it would be better to say it was a little shorter. Oh, really? My petrification effect has lasted for 3 minutes, looking at Hermione's proudly raised chin. Moon nodded in affirmation. You are worthy of being Professor Hermione. Of course, Hermione can now fully accept Moon's joke. Seeing that the wizard bar on Hermione's head is as long as his own, Moon knows that the level of spells sometimes does not represent the true strength of a wizard. After 3 weeks of special training, Moon's spell casting speed is already very fast. If he really meets Hermione on the battlefield, he will be in Xilin's current position. Seeing that Moon was a little dazed, Hermione wiped her mouth and said, I don't know why you have to learn the petrification spell, but I think learning the division spell is definitely more suitable for you. Hermione came to this conclusion because of the experience of the rope-cutting curse 2 weeks ago. Moon's performance at that time left a deep impression on her. At that time, Moon only listened to Ron's words once, and he learned the division spell. Yes, I think so too. Harry also finished breakfast at this time and joined the conversation. Seeing that both of them were curious about why they didn't learn the division spell, Moon could only helplessly distinguish. Actually, I don't know there are any split-type spells. Moon's words were very true. Since he came to Hogwarts to study, he has been very busy every day. Making wands, previewing textbooks, learning magic languages, and learning herbal plants. These things have occupied all his time, and he has no time to look for other spell extracurricular books. Hermione seemed to have known that Moon would say this. She looked at the people around her who were busy discussing Halloween in a few days, and then she moved closer and whispered about what happened last week. Actually, I flipped through the 3rd grade spell textbook last week and found a spell that is very suitable for you, 3rd grade. Are you sure? Moon's idea was still to read more basic magic knowledge extracurricular books when he had time, but Hermione had actually skipped 2 grades. This made him feel that he could never catch up. Of course, I found that the spells they learned were already very powerful, and they required the professor to be present when casting spells. Hermione was still talking non-stop, not paying any attention to Moon's expression. For example, I found a spell called Split into Pieces, which is a type of splitting spell. Can I take a look at this book? Knowing that there are more advanced spells to learn, Moon couldn't help but yearn for it. Well, maybe not now. The book I found was taken away by Professor Flitwick. Many times Moon wanted to know more, such as the magic knowledge of Hogwarts and the mysterious Wizards Association of Xilin. But now he found that sometimes knowing too much is not a good thing. Especially when you know it but can't get it. After Hermione finished talking about the spell of Split into Pieces, Moon wanted to ask the seniors for advice. But no 3rd-year students dared to agree. Even the Weasley twins who paid the least attention to school discipline did not agree to Moon's request. No, if I give you this, your mother will definitely send a holler letter. Although we are not afraid, this is beyond the scope of your magic. Even the twins refused, which made Moon temporarily give up the idea of learning this spell. Since he couldn't get it, Moon planned to practice the existing spells in his hand first. On Monday afternoon, after the herbology class, Moon brought Bengbeng to Hagrid's residence. Before they arrived, they saw Hagrid picking pumpkins in the vegetable garden from a distance, and then putting them into the basket one by one. These pumpkins have now all turned from green to golden yellow, and each one is frighteningly large. Moon looked down at the palm-sized carving knife in his hand, and then at the huge pumpkin that Hagrid had to hug with his arms. This made him feel like he was dueling with a dragon with a toothpick. But this is not the most important thing. Moon is curious about how the pumpkin grows. He hasn't been to the Forbidden Forest for only 2 weeks. Did Hagrid feed the pumpkin with a growth potion? Please read on. Chapter 59 Hagrid's Secret. Little guy, we meet again. After arriving at the cabin, Bengbeng was obviously happier than Moon. Hagrid took out some dried insect snacks, and Yaya carried it everywhere. Seeing the two pets playing happily, Hagrid turned to look at Moon. "Fortunately you came today, otherwise I really don't know how to deal with these two little guys," Hagrid said as he took out 2 pots of flowers from under the eaves of the cabin. These were the water bottle grass that Moon gave him to get rid of insects. Now that pumpkins have entered the harvest season, the lid on the water bottle grass has been completely closed. In fact, you don't have to worry at all. This kind of grass likes a cold and humid environment very much. You are just right here. Moon took the flower pot and looked at the flower tube of the water bottle grass. It was already densely packed with insect corpses. "Is that so? I went to Miss Pants to borrow some books, but I didn't find this plant at all." Hagrid's words made Moon's heart tighten. Water bottle grass is not a plant in this world, of course it can't be found. But fortunately Hagrid didn't delve into it, otherwise he would have to make some explanations against his will. In fact, you don't need to look for any information. This kind of grass is very adaptable. It will enter a dormant period in winter to warm the seeds, and they will grow more in the spring of next year. That's good. They really helped me a lot this year. Pumpkins are the most harvested this time, Hagrid said and put the 2 pots of flowers back under the eaves, and then gently stroked the full flowers with his hand. "Don't worry, little guy, if your population grows larger next year, I will find a good place for you in the Forbidden Forest." Hearing this familiar sentence, Moon recalled that Hagrid seemed to have said something similar to Bung. It was the beginning of the school year, and Hagrid was worried that Bung couldn't live in the castle, and he also said that he would find a place in the Forbidden Forest to settle him. Thinking of this, Moon looked at the gloomy Forbidden Forest in the distance. The dangerous factors there are not all caused by Hagrid. "Okay, come in quickly. What's good about the Forbidden Forest? I left more than 20 small pumpkins for you." Hagrid's voice pulled Moon's thoughts back, and then he hurriedly followed him into the house. "Hagrid, did you use any new grafting method?" Moon couldn't help but wonder as he looked at the 2 baskets of pumpkins in front of him, which were of different sizes. Moon had studied crop planting for 4 years at York Farm, but it was the first time he had seen pumpkins of such a big contrast from the same variety. "Oh, this is actually my secret," Hagrid said, looking around subconsciously, and only spoke after he was sure that there would be no new customers. "It only takes a little magic to make it bigger." Can magic make food bigger? In Moon's view, a bigger pumpkin not only means a bigger pumpkin lantern, but also means that it can fill the stomachs of many people. Neil has been worrying about food recently. Even though he has encouraged more people to spend money to buy supplies, it is still far from enough. The longer the preparation for war takes, the longer the chaos will be. 2 weeks ago, Neil specially organized people to go to the farther east port city to buy supplies, but in the end he only brought back a small amount of food. Now the price of Xilin grain is changing every day. Ra has risen from 1 silver coin and 5 caddies to 3 silver coins per caddy. As for fresh vegetables, the price was ridiculous. The day before Moon came back, Neil even began to reduce the supply, reducing everyone's meals from 3 meals a day to 2 meals. Now that Moon has found a way to feed more people, he naturally can't miss it. Food? Oh yes, pumpkin pie is really delicious. Hagrid couldn't understand Moon's suffering after all, or no one in Hogwarts could understand it. Moon wanted to continue asking about the magic that makes pumpkins bigger, but Hagrid deliberately changed the subject. Moon noticed that Hagrid's expression was a little strange, and his eyes were always staring at the head of the bed. There was nothing there except a small pink umbrella. Hagrid didn't want to say more, and Moon didn't go into it. He didn't have the habit of forcing his friends. For Moon, since he already knew that there was this magic, he could find the answer in the library or Professor Sprout. "Okay, can we get started?" Thinking that there was still something to do in the evening, Moon took out the toolkit directly, which contained 5 small knives of different shapes neatly placed inside. "Wow, these little gadgets of yours are really exquisite." Hagrid picked up Moon's carving knife as if he was holding a toy. "What you are holding in your hand is the knife I used to cut a wand." "Really?" Hagrid carefully turned the knife back and forth in his hand to check it out. "By the way, I heard from Professor Sprout that your wand is finished, right?" "Yes." Moon took out other knives one after another. "It only took less than a month. How did you do it?" Hagrid put down the knife, his eyes full of curiosity. Moon didn't want to deceive Hagrid. He could only explain that he might be very talented in carving wood. But Hagrid seemed to have changed into a different person, and kept asking Moon a lot of questions about wand maintenance. Although I haven't been involved in wand maintenance, as long as I know the wand body, wand core, length, weight, and style, I think it shouldn't be difficult to replicate an identical wand. Moon responded to Hagrid's questions while fiddling with the pumpkin in his hand. But that person likes the original wand more. What should I do? If the wand is broken in the middle as you said, then first check whether the wand core is damaged. There is no problem with the wand core. I have checked it several times. Hagrid's voice was a little hurried. If there is no problem with the wand core, then check whether the wand core is misplaced. If it is misplaced, help it return to its original groove position, then align the broken part of the wand body exactly, and repair it if there are any wood chips missing. Finally, use glue with good magic conductivity to reinforce it. Moon said his rough guess. Although he has not repaired the wand yet, he now thinks about every step very clearly. So it's so troublesome. I said why it's not as smooth as before, Hagrid muttered softly, but Moon didn't hear it clearly. He was now concentrating on the pumpkin lantern in his hand. Wait. When did you carve these three? Hagrid was holding a half-peeled pumpkin in his hand. He looked at the three scary but very cute pumpkin lanterns in front of Moon in a daze. Just as you were talking, Moon's fourth pumpkin lantern was about to be completed. After the one-splitting training, Moon's carving speed was no longer the same as before. If he still needs to set up a stall to sell wood carvings at the zoo during the holidays, Moon is confident that there will never be a long line in front of the stall again. Moreover, Moon's four pumpkin lanterns are completely different in style. He borrowed from the various pumpkin lantern toys that his classmates received in the morning. Okay, I'll carve four to practice today, and I'll continue tomorrow. Moon wiped the knife and left the cabin with Bengbeng. Hagrid reacted at this time, looked at Moon's four pumpkin lanterns, and then looked at the 5 baskets of large pumpkins he had left. He felt that he might have to stay up late these days. Asking for the Little Wizard's follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets. Chapter 60 Finding a Research Direction. The sun had just set, and Moon had finished dinner in the hall. Today was Monday, and there was a gathering of the Christmas Cactus Club in the evening, which was an activity that Moon would definitely attend every week. Although he had only joined the club for 3 weeks, Moon had already learned a lot, especially in terms of magical plants. He had gained a lot of knowledge. Seeing Moon and Cedric leave the table together again, Harry, who had finally rested for a day, looked at Ron. Does Moon go to the gathering every Monday? Yes, although my father said that Professor Sprout's Herb Club is very influential in the wizarding world, I don't envy Moon at all. At this point, Ron glanced at Hermione who was sitting opposite him. The little witch would stare at Moon eagerly every time she went to attend club activities. Why, weren't you very happy that Moon could join the club? Harry looked at Ron, who changed his words after only 2 weeks, with some confusion. Actually, I was happy, but after my mother's letter, I never mentioned it again. It turned out that Ron had already communicated with his family about Moon joining the Herb Club. At first, he just wanted to show off that he had a great friend, but the content of Mrs. Weasley's reply made him feel like he had shot himself in the foot. Dear son, I think you should learn from your good friend. Mom actually asked me to learn from Moon. That's really killing me. Moon got up before dawn every day to learn magic, making wands, practicing spells, and completing homework in advance. He even added things to the Herb Club recently. If Ron had any of these, he wouldn't be able to stick to it, let alone do them all. It was also through this letter to his family that Ron learned a lesson. Anyway, he would never tell his family that he had excellent classmates in the future. I think you are right. Harry drank a mouthful of hot porridge and nodded in agreement. Hermione was actually listening to what Ron said, and she didn't agree with the conversation between the two boys opposite. Hermione has been looking up a lot of information in the library recently. She knows that the Christophagate Club is not only very famous in the British wizarding world, but also in the entire European wizarding world. Plant magic, herbal research, magic hospitals, herbal trading markets. There are members of the Crispigma Club in these different magic fields. Even the legendary Newt Scamander is an honorary member. Thinking of this, Hermione couldn't help but feel a little jealous. Her father is a famous dentist in London, so she knows a little about the power of this kind of high-level medical club. But she didn't have a good way for the time being, so she could only focus on the textbook in front of her. Moon didn't know what his friends thought. Anyway, he was very busy in the club. Because he hadn't found the direction he wanted to study next, Moon had set his sights on all the herbal plants in the club in the past 2 weeks. Now he has a basic understanding of the 32 plants in the club classroom. Even after seeking advice from Professor Sprout, Moon has begun to wear fire dragon leather gloves to loosen the soil, fertilize, and water some magic plants. After watching for so long, haven't you figured out what to do next? Cedric was collecting spores of sleepy fungi at this time. These little things were very fragile, so he spoke very softly. I just had a preliminary idea today. But I have to wait to ask the professor before making a decision. Moon is now thinking about the magic of the big pumpkin that he saw at Hagrid. In his opinion, this magic is more useful than some herbs. Well, I really hope to see your work soon. In the club's classroom, each plant has its own results next to it. Only Moon's willow branches are swaying alone in the corner. Don't worry, I don't think it will take too long. Moon loosened the oil of the moonlight grass on the middle table. This small flower blooms every night, and the petals are as beautiful as white moonlight. Now the care task of this small grass has been taken care of by Moon. He only needs to loosen the soil and water it on time. Just as Moon was admiring the moonlight grass, Sprout was already surrounded by several students and walked into the classroom. Listening to several seniors asking some questions that Moon had never understood, he could only wait temporarily in the distance. Only when you study a certain field of magic more deeply can you find more problems. This is the case with the senior students in the club now. They have been studying their own herbal plants for several years, but they still have different problems. Professor Sprout will focus on solving these problems every Monday. If she encounters a difficult problem, she will also experiment with the students to solve it. Everyone in the club focuses on studying their own problems, and the professor will do his best to guide them. This is also one of the reasons why Moon likes the club. After the senior students dispersed around the podium, Moon walked over directly. Why, Mr. Scarlett, have you found something you want to study? Sprout actually admired Moon very much. She had never seen someone who knew so much about plants at such a young age as Moon. Even for the seasons and weather, which require a long time to accumulate experience, Moon also knows a little. It is precisely because of this that Sprout allowed Moon to observe more plants in the club, so that she could find the direction she really likes. But Moon always brings her surprises. After she agreed to let Moon observe plants, this first-year wizard actually slowly learned to take care of each plant. Even now after she left, Moon can take care of these existing plants alone. After discovering Moon's talent, Sprout was more certain that he had found a wizard with great talent in herbs and plants. Yes, Professor, but I still need your guidance. At Sprout's signal, Moon told what he saw and heard in Hagrid's hut. Hagrid's big pumpkin, right? You can see it every Halloween. He really didn't lie to you. It really only requires a small magic, the expansion spell. Expansion spell. Is it simple? Moon's mouth curled up slightly. If he mastered the expansion spell, he would have a way to solve the food shortage crisis in Xilin. Of course it's simple, but Hagrid has his own difficulties that he can't tell you. You have to understand him, Professor. Don't worry. Hagrid is my friend. In addition, I want to ask, can the pumpkin after the spell be eaten? Eat the pumpkin under the spell? Sprout didn't react a little. She had never thought about it in this way. Yes, I saw that Hagrid's pumpkin is more than 10 times bigger than before, so can it feed more people? I haven't tried this. Maybe you can ask Professor Flitwick, but I think you should be looking for magic to increase plant yields. That's right. Moon thought about it and it was right. Making the pumpkin bigger is to feed more people, and increasing the yield is also to feed people. So as long as it is related magic, he is willing to study it. Seeking follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from the Little Wizard. Chapter 61. The spell is just a means. In response to Moon's question, Professor Sprout gave his own method. Fertilization and growth potion. However, neither of them met Moon's needs. The premise of increasing production through fertilization is that there must be a large area of land and sufficient time. But Xilin is about to usher in a war, and the land, crops, and even labor will definitely be destroyed, and time is something that cannot be possessed. As for the growth potion, this is not something that ordinary plants can absorb at all. Perhaps growth potions can be used to cultivate large magical plants, but for growing food, one is that crops cannot absorb it, and the other is that potions are not easy to refine. Professor, is there no other way? Moon asked with some reluctance. If we only talk about plant growth magic, there are indeed only these two, but as for spells, Sprout thought for a while, and then spoke. In addition to the expansion spell, there is also a growth spell, and rapid enlargement spell, but if you want to know the specific differences between them, you have to find Professor Flitwick. Okay, I know, Professor. After getting the answer, Moon wanted to go to the library to find some information first, but Sprout stopped him again. Wait, Moon, are you sure you want to study this kind of magic that enlarges or accelerates the growth of plants? It seems so now. Seeing that Professor Sprout was still a little worried, Moon answered sincerely. You can actually think about it again. In fact, Molinar's incense and Cedric's sleepy mushroom powder are very good. You don't have to study this more basic thing. In Sprout's opinion, Moon's choice is not what she likes. In terms of cultivating students, she is actually very happy to be a person who lifts up students, especially hoping that students can achieve greater achievements in her research. Moon's choice is completely the opposite. If your choice is a hard-working gardener, then what Moon wants to study is the person who cultivates the fields. Compared to other people's research, the path chosen by Moon is more basic, but also more difficult. Professor, I still want to give it a try. If it doesn't work, I will come back to study herbal plants. Anyway, I'm only 11 years old, haha. Okay, Sprout smiled and shook his head. Moon's answer made the professor of herbology unable to refuse, because at the age of 11, there are indeed many opportunities for trial and error, especially for students like Moon who are very active. Moon didn't know what Sprout was thinking. After leaving the club, he went straight into the library. Although he had been in Hogwarts for 2 months, Moon didn't know where Professor Flitwick's office was. But he was not in a hurry to ask now. During this period of time studying in Hogwarts, especially influenced by the Herb Club, Moon knew that if he didn't have a basic understanding of some things, he wouldn't find more accurate problems. Just like those seniors who pestered Sprout every day, they all knew how to ask accurate questions after they studied herbs in depth. So Moon first found a few related spell books and some magical plant books in the library. After the spell class on Tuesday afternoon was over, Moon stopped Professor Flitwick who was about to leave with his own questions. Mr. Scarlett, I have to say that you have great potential to be a duelist. Before Moon had time to ask his own questions, Professor Flitwick began to praise him. Is there anyone in your family who is engaged in wizard duels? Seeing Moon standing there in a daze, Flitwick curiously asked the question in his mind. Probably no, although he didn't know what wizard duels were. Moon knew very well that his family were ordinary people. Really? That's really strange. Just now after I finished explaining the repair spell, your spell-casting skills were fast and accurate. Even Miss Granger was not as fast as you. Professor Flitwick was talking about Moon's outstanding performance in class. Just now after Flitwick finished explaining the spell, Moon subconsciously pulled out his wand and directly repaired a broken pencil with a wave of his hand. The whole action was smooth and there was no delay. This is also the reason why Flitwick thought Moon had the potential to be a duelist. Mr. Scarlett, if you want to achieve good results in the wizard duel competition in the future, you must come to me, and I will tell you all my experience, Flitwick said, standing on the textbook again and patting Moon on the shoulder. He really admired Moon's technique of casting spells. Professor, we can talk about duelists later. I want to ask you some other questions now. Moon didn't want to study how to duel with wizards for the time being. In his opinion, keeping his relatives full is the most important thing to solve. Oh, that's a pity, but I'm still very happy to hear your questions. Expansion spell, growth spell, rapid enlargement, can indeed change the objects under the spell, but there are also differences between them. Professor Flitwick has a deep attainment in spells, and he can give corresponding answers to the questions raised by Moon. In the end, in order to make it easier for Moon to understand, he also compared these spells horizontally. The expansion spell can't actually change the true size of the original object. It achieves the magnification effect by expanding the gaps in the material structure, and the growth spell, it mainly acts on plants and functions like a powerful catalyst. The last, rapid enlargement, it will make the object larger in a short period of time, but it will also destroy the internal structure of the object. It is a very dangerous spell. After Flitwick finished explaining the 3 spells, he adjusted his glasses on the bridge of his nose. Sir, do you remember what I said in the first spell class? Hearing Flitwick's question, Moon thought about it for a while and roughly guessed what the other party said. So he blurted out. If you don't know what you want, you will never know what spell to learn. Yes, it seems that what Miss Granger said about your excellent memory is actually true. Moon was stunned for a moment. He never thought that Hermione actually said this to Flitwick. Okay, now that you know this sentence, you should understand that spells are just means. Before that, you must tell me what you want. Flitwick always finds the essence of the problem. His reminder made Moon jump out of the vicious circle of studying spells. I want to make a kind of food crop grow quickly in a short period of time, so that more people can have enough food. Hearing Moon's request, Flitwick pondered. Your request is really a bit strange. It reminds me of the court wizards in the Middle Ages. Court wizard? Moon was surprised by this statement with only one word difference. Yes, some wizards at that time chose to be loyal to the king. And they were also asked to solve the problem of food. Did they solve it? Of course not. Otherwise how could they be hunted down? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62, Professor's Chat? Since those so-called court wizards did not solve the food shortage problem at that time, Moon did not want to know why they were hunted down. Professor Flitwick also saw what Moon was thinking, so he did not tell these ancient legends, but took out a feather pen and wrote on paper. In fact, none of the 3 existing spells can solve your problem, so I suggest that you try to modify a spell yourself. Maybe it will work. After Flitwick finished speaking, he handed over a piece of parchment. I agreed to Mr. Moon Scarlett to borrow the book The Secret of Spells, How to Modify Spells. Phileas Flitwick, this is a book in the restricted area of the library. I think you will definitely use it. Moon took the note and glanced at the content on it, then looked straight at Professor Flitwick. Professor, do you think I can modify spells? Moon's confidence was not very high. His view of spells has always been from the perspective of a student. It's just that he is responsible for learning whatever the professor teaches, and he has never thought about modifying a spell. Of course, Mr. Scarlett, there are not many people who transform or create new spells when they are students, but there are some. Hearing what Flitwick said, Moon could only reluctantly agree. Well, okay, perhaps seeing that Moon still didn't believe in himself, Flitwick smiled and continued to encourage. You must remember that only when you know what you want can you know what spells to learn. Under Professor Flitwick's instructions, Moon thanked him and quickly walked out of the spell classroom. The bell for the next transfiguration class has already rung. In the evening, after Moon finished carving pumpkin lanterns, he borrowed his first banned book from the library. The author of The Secret of Spells, How to Transform Spells is Balfour Bran. He took the lead in establishing the Experimental Spells Committee of the Ministry of Magic in 1593. The department is responsible for supervising the development and use of experimental spells. Balfour Bran had already left the Ministry of Magic when he wrote this book, so it can be said that this is a summary of a staff member who has been engaged in experimental spells for a lifetime. After reading the introduction on the title page, Moon became very interested in the content of the book. The book is divided into 2 parts. The first part explains how to modify spells, and the second part is about creating spells. The first step to modifying spells is to understand the elements of spells, the structural framework, and the relationship between the various parts. After the library closed, Moon returned to the common room with a big book. However, he had just opened the big book when Ron exclaimed after glancing at the content on the title page. Balfour Bran. I just ate his card before school started. Ron was talking about the chocolate frog card, and Balfour Bran was also a character on it. Has he written any books? Dad only said that he was a wizard with deep attainments in spell research. Ron walked over and Moon casually flipped the title page of the book to show him a clearer view. Oh, it's about spells. Forget it. I'm not interested. Ron left after he finished speaking, but his words attracted Hermione, who was sitting not far away. Is this a banned book? Seeing Hermione carefully sitting opposite, Moon nodded slightly. Then I can. Forget it, or, it doesn't matter. I think Professor Flitwick won't refuse. After getting the agreement, Hermione's eyes lit up slightly, and then she couldn't wait to read the contents of the book together. The author of this book has done a thorough research. He can actually break down the spells so meticulously. When most people return to the dormitory at night, Moon and Hermione also finished reading the first chapter. Hearing Hermione say this, Moon felt the same way. In the past, he learned spells by knowing the spells and gestures, and then practicing them continuously. But Balfour Bran broke down every word, every sound, and every subtle gesture of the spell. Even the pronunciation and intonation under different tones were marked with different meanings by the other party. I think this book is not enough to read it once, Moon said, the true feeling in his heart. Yes, the content is too complicated. Hermione rubbed her sore eyes and turned to look at Moon again. Aren't you studying herbs and plants? Why do you want to learn spells again? I originally just wanted to study a spell that can make plant fruits bigger, but Professor Flitwick insisted on suggesting that I modify it. After discovering the difficulty of the basic spells, Moon couldn't help but complain about the suggestion made by Professor Flitwick. Plant fruits become bigger? Is this what you learned in the herb club? Not learning, but my own research direction. Hermione had never joined a club and didn't understand how it worked, so she thought it was what she learned in the club. Oh, then what's the point of studying this? Even if the fruit can grow bigger, won't it still look the same when planted in the soil? Hermione didn't understand Moon's idea. I just want to make more people full. Okay, let's stop here today, Moon said, putting away the secret of spells, how to modify spells, and returning to the dormitory. Hermione stood there in confusion after hearing what Moon said. Make people full? Don't his family have enough to eat? He can't be the child of a wanderer. Moon didn't know what Hermione was thinking. Anyway, he fell asleep soon after returning to the dormitory. The next day, Moon woke up early and read the first chapter again and again. After all the roommates came out, they went to the auditorium together. At the same time, in the staff cafeteria, Professor Sprout was approached by Professor Flitwick as soon as he walked in. Pomona, did you know that Mr. Scarlett wants to study the spell to make plants grow bigger? Of course, I recommended this child to you. He has a high talent in herbal plant magic, Sprout said happily and sat next to Flitwick, then poured a bowl of oatmeal. Really? But I think this child's talent in wizard duels is even more amazing. He casts spells very quickly. Really? I didn't notice that, but Phileas, he is already a member of my club. Sprout was very happy because he was the first to discover Moon. Now another professor has discovered Moon's talent, which makes her unconsciously feel superior. Oh, don't be like that. It would be a waste if such a promising boy doesn't join the spell study club. Besides, I gave him a list of books on reforming spells yesterday. Flitwick also saw Sprout's expression. In order to prove that Moon was actually more talented in spells, he turned to look at Snape, who was sitting next to him. Severus, in which grade were you when you invented the fuchsia? Snape had actually been listening to the conversation between the two professors. At first, he just thought that Moon might really have some talent. But now Flitwick actually compared him with a little stupid lion, which made his face unconsciously turn cold. 3rd grade, Professor, seeking follow-up reading from The Little Wizard. Chapter 63, Hermione's thoughts. After Flitwick asked about the transformation spell, the atmosphere in the faculty cafeteria cooled down. Oh. Don't be angry, Severus, you are a senior. Seeing that Snape's face was not right, Professor Flitwick immediately explained. I am not that. Snape was about to say that he would not be the senior of the Gryffindor stupid lion, but thinking of his identity, he held back. It's okay, Severus, actually I just think your record is likely to be broken. Broken? Just because of Moon Scarlet. Snape took a mouthful of pumpkin porridge, his tone full of disdain. Severus, don't be so fussy, the record is there to be broken, it's just a matter of time. For the professor who once taught him, Snape really couldn't argue too much with Flitwick. But at this time, his attention to Moon also went up a level. No need to compare spells anymore, Phileas. Mr. Scarlet should just focus on studying magical plants. Knowing that Snape didn't like Gryffindor students, Sprout stopped Flitwick's conversation in time. Mr. Scarlet is taking care of more than 30 herbs in my herb club now. He even takes good care of the moonlight grass that Newt left behind, Sprout said with a satisfied smile on his face. Isn't that moonlight grass very rare? Flitwick still remembered Sprout, who came back from the herb club gathering this spring. She was very excited to say that this was the second moonlight grass found in the British wizarding world in 30 years. That's right, but Mr. Scarlet has been taking care of it for 2 weeks without any mistakes. Hearing that Flitwick and Sprout had been talking about the little lion, Snape's expression became worse and worse. He had to speed up his chewing, as he was very particular about dining etiquette. But when he finished the last mouthful of pumpkin porridge, a pungent smell appeared in the staff lounge. Flitwick and Sprout also smelled it at the same time. They frowned and looked out the door. Sure enough, after the door was pushed open, a young professor with a turban appeared. Oh, good morning, Professors. I didn't know you were still here. Quirrell rarely appeared in the faculty cafeteria. He usually ate in his own lounge. But recently he seemed to appear in front of people intentionally or unintentionally. The professors had to try to eat at different times. And this morning, Flitwick and Sprout were late for dinner because of the argument about Moon's talent, so they happened to run into Quirrell. Quirinus, as a Ravenclaw, you should know that these smelly things will not have any effect. As the head of Ravenclaw, Professor Flitwick's attitude towards Quirrell has changed from appreciation at the beginning to complete disappointment. Quirrell was an outstanding graduate in his student days, and was hired as a professor of Muggle studies shortly after graduation. Originally, in Flitwick's opinion, if Quirrell taught well, he might break Snape's record and become the youngest head of the school in the future. But his idea was completely shattered after Quirrell went on a long trip to the Dark Forest. Professor, I'm sorry. After hearing Flitwick's words, Quirrell stood at the door and didn't come in. Especially after he saw Snape stand up, Quirrell wanted to turn around and leave. Professor Quirrell, you haven't had breakfast yet. After discovering Quirrell's intention, Snape quickly walked up and stopped him. I'm not hungry, I'm already in the cafeteria, how can I not be hungry? Snape said as he stopped Quirrell into the faculty cafeteria, and then walked to the end of the dining table. The smell of garlic in the room became stronger. Sprout and Flitwick threw away their unfinished breakfast and left directly. In the end, only the two youngest professors were left in the cafeteria. In the auditorium next door, the appetite of the young wizards was not very high. They were not because of the pungent smell of garlic, but because they had eaten pumpkin for 3 consecutive days. Pumpkin soup, pumpkin pie, pumpkin salad, pumpkin noodles, roasted pumpkin. There are many kinds of food, but pumpkin is the main ingredient for half of them. I feel like I'm going to throw up if I eat more pumpkin. Ron was picking out the pumpkin slices from the salad one by one. Harry also tried to take some non-pumpkin food. Even Hermione, who loved pumpkin pie, didn't touch the golden pumpkin pie today. Moon didn't particularly dislike a certain food. In the winter before Xilin, Aunt Daisy would cook sweet potatoes and crispy cabbage for 3 consecutive months because of food shortage. After this experience, Moon could still accept the pumpkin meals for 3 days and 9 meals now. How can you still eat it? Ron saw Moon finish a bowl of pumpkin porridge without changing his expression, and showed a strange look. Actually, it tastes pretty good, and I know these pumpkins very well, they're all very fresh. Moon was telling the truth. Pumpkin tastes slightly sweet, and he rarely eats sugar in Xilin, so this kind of food is already very good. And he knew that the pumpkins on the table were all from Hagrid's vegetable garden. These were fresh vegetables that had just been picked 2 days ago. They were all pumpkins that were not suitable for carving and were sent to the kitchen by Hagrid. Ron didn't understand Moon, but he still insisted on picking all the pumpkins in the salad. Hermione, who was sitting opposite, became more determined after hearing Moon's words. So they are really wanderers. Wednesday's classes were the same as usual, relaxed and fulfilling. The only change was that the little wizards were looking forward to tomorrow's Halloween dinner. But Moon also found something different from usual. In the defense against the dark arts class, Professor Quirrell's face became very ugly, and he misread several words when reading the text. Although Moon still found it difficult to adapt to the smell of garlic in the classroom, he had learned self-hypnosis. As long as he focused all his attention on the content of the textbook, the pungent smell of garlic would be less. But Moon's method didn't last long today. Because Quirrell rarely let the students study on their own before the class was over, and then he returned to the professor's lounge upstairs. This is definitely the best defense against the dark arts class ever. After Quirrell left, Ron's statement was recognized by everyone. After all the classes during the day were over, Moon, who had no homework, arranged an activity for himself to practice spells. He was still in his old position, in the corner of the common room. No one disturbed him here, and it was very quiet. But just as Moon was casting the leg-lock curse on the stick man, Hermione came over. I'm very sorry, I shouldn't have questioned your research direction. Of course, if you need anything, you can tell me, and I'll find someone to donate some clothes or something. Wait, what do you mean by this? Moon's wand stopped in mid-air and looked at Hermione. Aren't you a homeless child, asking for follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from Little Wizards? Chapter 64 Who Dares to Follow Quirrell? Moon didn't know how Hermione came up with this ridiculous idea. Anyway, he directly dispelled Hermione's idea of collecting donations for him. It's not that he disliked the clothes and supplies collected by the collection, But even if he received these supplies now, he couldn't take them back to Xilin. Thinking of this, Moon silently put away his wand. He felt that it was more important to find a way to increase the food as soon as possible. As for his spell practice, this is something that requires long-term persistence. Now his petrification curse can last for more than 5 minutes, and the speed of casting the spell is the same as the speed of Xilin shooting 3 rounds of arrows. As for leg lock curse, the duration of the spell effect is more than 30 minutes, and the speed of casting the spell can even compete with Xilin. 1 round of arrows, 1 spell. Moon is actually very satisfied to achieve this speed. Especially after he knew that Xilin's skills were the best among all the veterans in the alley, he knew that his spells could meet the basic self-protection requirements. Just after Moon put away his wand, the portrait door of the common room opened. Professor McGonagall came to the common room and started the monthly routine inspection. She first stopped George and Fred from setting off fireworks indoors. She also prohibited Lee Jordan from releasing a large spider in the common room. Finally, when she was about to leave, McGonagall noticed Moon in the corner. Mr. Scarlett, you cannot practice spells in the common room. I hope you can remember this. Okay, Professor. Until McGonagall got out of the portrait door, Moon looked at Hermione blankly. Don't look at me, I didn't tell on you. I'm not talking about the issue of telling on you. Isn't there a rule about this in the school rules? Moon was inspired by Hermione at the beginning of the school year and wrote down all the school rules. He didn't remember such a rule among them. It shouldn't be, but the common room is indeed unsafe. It's too noisy here and accidents are easy to happen. McGonagall should have the same idea as Hermione, but this posed a problem for Moon. The school rules clearly stated that students cannot perform magic in the corridors, and now it is not recommended to practice spells in the common room, so Moon can only find a new place. That night, Moon did not practice spells again. After reading The Secret of Spells, How to Transform Spells for a while, Moon and all the little wizards left the lounge and went to the astronomy tower. Wednesday night's astronomy class has slowly changed from curiosity to boredom and torture. Especially now that the weather is getting colder, Moon has to wear 2 more layers. The next day, all the little wizards got up late as expected. But everyone was very excited after getting up, because tonight was the Halloween dinner. For this reason, the afternoon flying class was cancelled, and today's Gryffindor first-year students only need to take 1 spell class. Professor Flitwick's attention to Moon is getting more and more. Yes, the gestures are very accurate, Mr. Scarlett, the spell chanting is accurate, Mr. Scarlett. In the past, only Hermione could get such treatment. Now Professor Flitwick's change made Moon suddenly a little uncomfortable, and fortunately he did not choose to sit with Hermione. Otherwise, the little witch would definitely compete with him secretly again. Okay, students, Mr. Scarlett did a great job, but you must not forget the subtle wrist movement I just made, and you must pronounce the spell correctly. It's Wingardium Leviosa. Don't pronounce F as S, otherwise your deskmate will probably stand on your chest. Professor Flitwick demonstrated a levitation spell again with Neville's toad, and then asked the two to practice together on the feather on the table. Moon sat with Neville, and when he saw the poor little wizard carefully grab Lefau and put it back in his pocket, he signaled Neville to start practicing first. Moon felt that it was necessary to slow down his learning speed in the spell class now, so as to better cover up the secrets on his body. Winger. Winger, what's the next one? Neville's memory was still as bad as ever, even though he carried a memory ball with him. After watching Professor Flitwick walk away, Moon quickly took out his wand and recited the spell to the feather. Wingardium Leviosa. As Moon finished speaking, the feather that had been lying peacefully in front of the wand tip slowly floated into the air. Before Neville could react, Professor Flitwick's voice came first. Come. Let me take a look first. Moon could tell that Professor Flitwick was running over. Wow, I didn't expect that Mr. Scarlett would succeed in one try. As Professor Flitwick's words rang in his ears, Moon felt many eyes focused on him. I decided to give Gryffindor 1 point, until Moon withdrew the wand and the feather slowly fell from the air. Professor Flitwick left reluctantly. You did a really good job, Neville's voice rang. Moon just nodded, and then helped the other party point out the mistakes in the spell. At this time, Hermione and Ron, who were sitting in the back row, quarreled again over the syllables of the spell. It seemed that these two people had been at odds since the beginning of the school year. Moon had witnessed at least 5 scenes of the two quarreling. Moon also found something very interesting in these quarrels. Sometimes occupying the truth does not necessarily mean winning in a quarrel. Take Hermione for example. She is always right, but she is also the one who gets hurt after every quarrel. Sure enough, this time was the same. Hermione succeeded in the levitation spell at once and was praised by Professor Flitwick. But when the class was over, Ron made Hermione cry again with a sentence, "She has absolutely few friends." However, Moon did not know about this, and he left the classroom in a hurry when the class was over. Today, several plants in the Herb Club need to be loosened and watered. He has to complete this task before the banquet starts in the evening, and then he can enjoy the food with peace of mind. The characteristics of magical plants are different, and they have their own tempers like small animals. Among the 32 plants in the club, the most difficult to take care of is a dragon blood grass. This is a plant left by Nymphadora Tonks, who graduated last year. According to Cedric, this senior sister is very talented in disguise, and she also used this method to sneak into the dragon's nest and steal this herb. But she herself did not think it was stealing, because she also left a letter with an IOU for the dragon. Dragon blood grass needs to be grown with fertilizer made from dragon dung, so Professor Sprout specially made a fiery red fertilizer for this purpose. Moon needs to change the soil and fertilize this grass every 3 days. Otherwise it will wither. When Moon arranged all the plants for today, it was time for the dinner to begin. He had heard several groups of little wizards excitedly passing by the door. When he was about to leave, a pungent but familiar smell of garlic came from outside. Moon knew that this was Professor Quirrell preparing to attend the dinner. But when he was about to open the door, he suddenly stopped because he found that Quirrell's footsteps seemed too anxious. Entering the school, from Quirrell's voice, Moon guessed that someone should be following him. Is there really someone in the school who is not afraid of garlic and dares to follow Quirrell, asking for the follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from the Little Wizards? Chapter 65, Continuous, Leg-Locking Curse. Curiosity kills the cat. This is the first proverb Moon learned after arriving at Hogwarts. He had only heard professors use this phrase when dissuading students before. After all, young wizards are always curious about new magic. Of course, these curious young wizards also include Moon, especially after 4 years of being called a half-baked spiritualist. But today, after opening the wooden door of the Herb Club, Moon truly knew the true power of this sentence. Christoma Cacti Club is on the right side of the auditorium on the first floor, next to a long stone staircase. The stairs lead up to the teaching area on the second floor, and down to the Hufflepuff common room and potion classroom. When Moon walked out of the door, Quirrell had already run into the auditorium, and the person following him turned and walked towards the second floor. This was the first time Moon saw someone leave such a long shadow on the stairs. Originally curious about who could endure the garlic smell on Quirrell, Moon now wanted to see whose long shadow was on the ground. Enduring the pungent garlic smell, Moon quietly walked to the stairs. Bang! Moon first saw a huge shoeless foot stepping on the stairs. Then there was a pair of strong and sturdy calves. Then there was a brown bark skirt, dark skin, and finally a head the size of a cocoa bean, giant. Watching the creature about 12 feet tall walking step by step towards the second floor, a name from the textbook popped up in Moon's mind. The giant steps were very big, and each of its steps was 3 times longer than that of an ordinary person. It only took 2 steps to walk up more than 10 stairs. Moon knew that this must be an enemy or a dangerous person, because no one would hold such a thick wooden stick in school. He covered his mouth and nose tightly, and then prepared to slowly retreat back to the club classroom. 1 step. 2 steps. Moon now regretted that he had just walked a long distance to see the other party clearly. The smell of garlic was still strong in the air, and at the same time, a stench from the giant came down from the stairs. Achoo! Moon made sure that he would definitely reduce the sound of the sneeze to a minimum. He even covered his mouth and nose, but the big guy still heard it. The long ears on the small head moved twice, and then the giant turned his head and saw Moon down the stairs. At the same time, Moon, who had not yet retreated to a safe place, also saw the giant's ugly face. The small eyes revealed a stupid and cruel look, and the big and ugly nose was still hung with thick white snot, and the thick lips were full of jagged fangs. After seeing Moon, the giant opened his mouth excitedly as if he had found prey. Then it strode downstairs, and the black stick shadow whistled down at the same time. Moon then performed the action he had practiced thousands of times in Xilin, leg lock curse, 9 consecutive shots. Boom! The stick shadow fell directly in front of Moon, less than an inch away from his nose. The giant fell down the stairs because of the curse. At this time, Moon could hear the noise of students in the auditorium, the shouting of the class leader, and a female voice coming down from the second floor. Moon, Hermione called several times before Moon recovered from his panic. The big wooden stick was just a little bit away from hitting his head. Moon finally recovered, and many people ran out of the hall. McGonagall was walking in the front, but when she turned the corner and saw Moon and Hermione, her face immediately turned cold. "What are you doing here?" McGonagall just said one sentence, and then she saw something lying on the ground. She immediately turned her head to look at the students who were about to catch up. "Go back to the hall, no one is allowed to come out, and you two, come quickly and hide behind me." Hearing this, Hermione pulled Moon, who had just reacted, and ran quickly behind McGonagall. "Okay, don't be afraid." The students returned to the hall without knowing why, but the professors came out one by one. "What happened?" Minerva, Dumbledore was walking in front of all the professors. When he saw the troll, his brows unconsciously frowned. "I don't know. As soon as I came out, I saw the troll lying on the ground." McGonagall's hands were still open at this time, protecting Moon and Hermione and moving back. Noticing that the white-bearded headmaster's eyes were looking at him, Moon hurriedly explained. "I don't know either. I just walked out of the club classroom and saw the giant walking to the second floor. Then it wanted to hit me, so I cast the leg-lock curse on it." Moon's words were a bit incoherent, but the explanation was clear. "I can prove it, Headmaster. Mr. Scarlett is taking care of herbs in my club." Sprout came out. And after he finished speaking, he came to Moon and patted him on the shoulder gently. Flitwick also walked out of the crowd at this time, holding the wand to the troll's legs and carefully inspected them. "Strange, it stands to reason that the troll's skin is very thick, and the leg-lock curse can't cause any harm to it. Is there any problem?" Phileas, Dumbledore also stepped forward to check the status of the troll. "It was the leg-locking curse. I estimate that at least 5 spells hit the troll. Otherwise, it would be impossible for this big guy to fall down the stairs and faint." Dumbledore also looked at the troll's legs. At this time, Moon's spell had little effect, and the troll's skin had great magic resistance. So just as Professor Flitwick finished speaking, the troll showed signs of activity again, fainted, all petrified, legs stiffened and dead. Dumbledore was the first to notice the troll's movements and cast a sleeping curse. Then Flitwick also cast a petrifying curse. At the same time, Moon tightly grasped one to cast another leg-locking curse on the troll. Oh, McGonagall and Sprout were both startled by Moon's sudden action. In their opinion, with Dumbledore here, there was no need to take action. But Moon didn't have such an idea, and he was still in a highly nervous state. Seeing the troll showing signs of movement, he instantly entered the spell-casting state. "I said he has a talent for being a duelist." After Professor Flitwick was surprised, he smiled at Moon with appreciation. However, the other professors were not like Flitwick. They all stared at Moon closely, and even Hermione beside him showed a curious look. Moon unconsciously blamed his right hand holding the stick. He was trained in this way by Xilin and Xilin. As long as the small animals he caught moved, Moon's leg-lock curse would hit them directly. Later, these small animals learned to be smart. They began to play dead to avoid being cursed. But later, Xilin ate all the small animals and replaced them with another batch. "Can't you just play dead?" Moon cursed the troll lying on the ground in his heart. "Okay, Minerva, the students have been waiting in the hall for a long time. The dinner will be held as usual. Everyone can go in and enjoy the food together." Dumbledore's face regained its calmness again, and then he looked at his deputy. "What about the troll? We can't just leave it here." "Don't worry, Phileas, I need you to stay here and wait for Severus to come back and hand the troll over to him." "Glad to help, Headmaster." Professor Flitwick bowed slightly to Dumbledore. "As for you, Mr. Scarlett, I think we need to talk." Seeking follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from the Little Wizard. Chapter 66, First Conversation with the Principal. Dumbledore's office is in a separate tower. The two of them walked through a long corridor to get here. Moon was very nervous on the way here. He didn't know what Dumbledore had found. But he must keep his secret no matter what the other party asked. After struggling in his heart for a while, Moon walked into a spacious and beautiful roundhouse unknowingly. The room was full of all kinds of funny little sounds. There were many small silverware on the table, which kept spinning and spewing out puffs of white smoke. There were many portraits of people hanging on the wall. Moon knew from the text description below that these were all former principals. Everything here was very novel, Even the table legs were in the shape of claws. But Moon still saw something familiar, the broken hat at the sorting ceremony. He still remembered what the hat said to him at the time: that choice is sometimes more important than everything. Opposite the sorting hat was the principal's pet phoenix. Ron had praised the pet of this great wizard more than once in the dormitory. He once said that this magical bird had a deep relationship with the Dumbledore family and seemed to have protected the family for a long time. Moon didn't know what the phoenix represented, but when he saw the phoenix, he couldn't take his eyes away. The feathers on this bird were so beautiful, especially the ones at the tail that flashed with strange colors. Fox also found Moon. It was originally just sleeping quietly on the shelf. It took its head out from under its wings after hearing footsteps. When it saw Moon, Fox's small eyes flashed with a strange look. When the eyes of a man and an animal met, the phoenix subconsciously took 2 steps back behind the shelf. Mr. Scarlett, would you like something? Tea or Hagrid puff pastry? When Moon heard Dumbledore say, Hagrid puff pastry, he was still stunned for a moment. He never thought that he and Hagrid would make a dessert that Dumbledore would use to entertain guests. No, Moon was still a little nervous. Relax, believe me, Mr. Scarlett, desserts can make people feel good, Dumbledore said and waved his hand gently, and 2 fat little white bowls floated in front of him. Moon took the white bowl with both hands and found that it was a warm, Hagrid's puff pastry. I prepare 1 or 2 portions every day, and use magic to maintain its temperature. Try it, the temperature must be just right. Hearing that it was the principal who used magic to maintain the temperature of the food, Moon curiously picked up the silver spoon and took a bite. This, Hagrid's puff pastry, was much softer and sweeter than what Moon had eaten in the cafeteria. Although I haven't traveled around the world, I have many old friends. This kind of food combination is rare. After hearing Dumbledore speak, Moon did not answer, he just accelerated the speed of eating. I heard that you and Hagrid made this thing together, right? Yes, Moon nodded and answered. Then there must be a lot of delicious food in your hometown, right? Hearing Dumbledore say the word hometown, Moon put down the silver spoon in his hand. No, it's not. Dumbledore's words seemed to be very magical, and Moon didn't have the courage to refuse to answer. Oh, so, I also heard from Sprout that you have made a wand, made of willow wood, with a unicorn tail hair color, right? That's right, don't be nervous, Mr. Scarlett, as far as I know. The wand you use yourself is also made of willow wood, right? Yes, Headmaster, this is amazing. When Ollivander wrote to me, he also mentioned some related things. Moon put down the fat bowl in his hand. He decided not to eat it for the time being. This was the second time Moon had seen Dumbledore in person since he enrolled. He used to think that the headmaster did not manage the school's affairs, but now it seems that he was wrong. Dumbledore knew everything he did, and it was very detailed. This made Moon feel that he was seen through by the other party. Dumbledore also noticed Moon's abnormality. He did not continue to ask questions, but concentrated on eating delicious food. It was not until Dumbledore finished eating the bubble cake and put the silver spoon on the plate with a crisp sound that Moon came back to his senses. Don't worry, Mr. Scarlett. No one will force you to say anything unless you want to. When Dumbledore spoke, Moon looked into the other's blue eyes. Those eyes were deep and peaceful, as if a glance could calm his mood. Moon even had a little impulse to tell the other party his secret, but the alarm bell in his heart rang, and Moon came back to his senses again. Of course, Principal, but I don't have anything to say. Oh, so Dumbledore took a deep breath and then smiled again. In fact, I personally welcome Mr. Scarlett to come to Hogwarts to study. I hope you can learn truly useful magic knowledge here. Yes, Principal, I am very happy here and have learned a lot. After experiencing the initial tension, Moon is now completely relaxed. Although he doesn't know whether Dumbledore used magic, he did have too many trances tonight. That's good. By the way, you helped the school deal with an emergency tonight. As the principal, I can give you some rewards. Hearing the reward, Moon's eyes lit up instantly. He was worried about not having a place to practice spells. Headmaster, can I apply for a classroom to practice spells? As soon as Moon said this, Dumbledore immediately thought of the third, leg-locking curse, that the troll had just endured. That kind of speed, accuracy, and reaction ability do require a long time of practice. Okay, but I have to consider the safety of the students, so can I ask what spells you want to practice? Moon did not doubt Dumbledore's original intention, and he directly told the types of spells he had mastered now. Leg-locking curse, petrification curse, and some minor evil curses. Is that all? Yes, after Moon answered, Dumbledore's slender fingers began to tap on the table regularly. Dong 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 dong. After 3 consecutive sounds, Dumbledore spoke again. I remember there is an empty classroom on the far right of the 2nd floor of the main teaching building. That place is very close to Minerva's office, and the school hospital is next to it. It should be very suitable for your requirements. Hearing that Dumbledore not only agreed, but also considered so much, Moon bowed to thank him. Don't be too anxious, Mr. Scarlett, I haven't finished yet. Since you are only a first year now, some things may not be handled by you, so I have to find someone to do temporary supervision in this classroom. How about Filch, principal? Can we change someone else? Why, Filch is very dedicated to the school, and I trust him very much. Moon wanted to discuss it further when an uncoordinated sound of footsteps came from the direction of the spiral staircase. Oh. Severus, is your leg okay? Please read it, vote for the monthly ticket, and recommend it to the little wizards. Chapter 67 Attracting Snape's Attention. Snape limped up the spiral staircase. From his painful expression, Moon could see that he was not very satisfied with the layout of the principal's office. Principal, we need to talk. Snape's tone was very serious. After he finished speaking to Dumbledore, he looked at Moon, who was standing aside. After seeing Snape's serious expression, Dumbledore smiled at Moon. Okay, Mr. Scarlett, your request is temporarily settled. You should be able to see the reward tomorrow. Now go to the dinner, otherwise the delicious food will get cold. Okay, Principal, goodbye. Moon nodded slightly to the 2 professors, and then quickly walked down the stairs. However, before he walked out of the door, he heard Snape's voice. All the protection is good, only the giant monster ran out, which is too suspicious. When Moon stepped out of the door, the conversation inside was already feigned. Protection? Suspicious, these 2 words flashed through his mind. Although Moon felt suspicious, he did not think about it again. After all, school affairs should be the responsibility of the principal and professors. Thinking of this, Moon ran quickly towards the auditorium. I've said long ago that Quirrell can't be trusted, but you insisted on arranging that guy in. Snape's voice was stern and full of doubt, which was completely unlike the tone a professor should have to the principal. Okay, Severus, I will consider Quirinus's matter. As for you, is your leg injury okay? Do you want to go find Madame Pomfrey? Dumbledore didn't care about Snape's tone. He was just paying attention to Snape's right leg that was bleeding. Don't worry about it. I will prepare some potions myself. Oh, okay, have you dealt with a troll? Of course, I cast multiple binding spells on it and injected it with a sleeping potion. It can only wake up in 3 days. You always make people feel at ease when you do things. Dumbledore smiled, but Snape didn't seem to buy it. Headmaster, you should pay more attention to that strange defense against the dark arts professor, Quirinus. He just fainted in the hall and should be lying in the school infirmary now. I will go to see him later. I didn't mean to visit him, but he is very likely to be up to something. The protection you have made is no longer reliable. After hearing Snape's blunt words, Dumbledore pondered for a moment, and then slowly spoke again. Okay, I will notify the other professors to strengthen the protection. As for Quirinus, since the troll has already run out, send it back to where it came from. Seeing that Dumbledore had finally made up his mind, Snape just pondered for a moment and did not refute again. Do you really not need to take another look at your leg, Severus? No need. The wound caused by the 3-headed dog is not easy to treat, and the potion in the school infirmary will not have any effect. As for the spell recovery, it's better for me to do it myself. Hearing Snape's arrogant tone with contempt for the school infirmary, Dumbledore rarely refuted, but smiled knowingly. It seems that it was a wise move for me to hire you as the potions professor. Snape just snorted coldly at Dumbledore's boasting and squinted his eyes at him. Now everyone in Hogwarts knew that he wanted to be the defense against the dark arts professor, but Dumbledore, as the headmaster, had not allowed it, which made him very angry. Okay, headmaster, if there is no other instructions, I will go back to make potions. Without waiting for Dumbledore to speak, Snape had already stood up and walked towards the stairs. Oh, you may have to bear with it for a while, Severus. Hearing that Dumbledore still had something to do, Snape turned around with a sullen face. I have already asked Minerva and Pomona, and now I want to ask your opinion. Hearing that Dumbledore had asked the 2 deans, Snape's frown loosened a little, and he guessed it should be something important. Please go ahead, headmaster. Oh, don't be so serious. I just think that as Mr. Scarlet's potions professor, you should know him a little bit, Scarlett. The Moon Scarlet who just walked out. Snape thought Dumbledore would have something big to do, but he didn't expect that he was actually concerned about a first-year wizard. This made him feel absurd for no reason. Sensing the change in Snape's tone, Dumbledore smiled and continued to explain. Yes, tonight when you went to check the protective mechanism, Mr. Scarlet had subdued the troll alone. That's impossible. Snape's tone was very sure. A first-year little stupid lion could subdue a troll? In Snape's opinion, it would be better for him to believe that Quirrell had no suspicion. But the fact is that Severus, and even Filius testified for him. More than 5. Leg-locking curse. Hearing Dumbledore say Professor Flitwick's name, Snape pondered for a moment. He remembered the casual conversation between the two professors in the faculty cafeteria yesterday. At that time, Flitwick was trying to prove the little stupid lion's talent for spells. Thinking of this, Snape calmed down and slowly walked back to the chair and sat down. More than 5. Leg-locking curse? If that's true, it can indeed penetrate the thick skin of the troll. Yes, although the troll's skin is also very hard, it is far less resistant to magic than the dragon's skin. So I want to ask, is it possible for this Mr. Scarlet to do it? Before Dumbledore asked, Snape was already recalling all of Moon's performance in the potion class in the past 2 months. He has a solid grasp of knowledge, but can only memorize it by rote. The success rate of potions is high, but there is nothing outstanding. He still respects the professor, but always wants to help others kindly. If Professor Flitwick said that he cast 5 spells in a row, I think it is possible. Why do you say that? This little fool. Looking up at Dumbledore who was still smiling, Snape pouted and continued. This little wizard is very steady when making potions. His partner is a stupid student, but he can always make up for it in time. Snape emphasized the word stupid. Although he handles the herbs rigidly according to the book, the potions he makes can only be ordinary, but he didn't make any mistakes in every step, especially his method is too clean and neat, without any delay. Snape's evaluation of a person has serious school discrimination, but he said very accurately about Moon's performance in the potion class. It seems that there is really nothing to doubt. After Snape finished speaking, Dumbledore stared at the window tightly, and then said something. Snape was also a little confused at this time. He had taught Moon for a long time. Except for finding that this little stupid lion has the quality of a good person, he really didn't find anything suspicious. But he knew that Dumbledore would never do meaningless things. Since he said so, there must be something wrong with Moon. Please read, vote, and recommend from all the little wizards. Chapter 68 Harry's Past Treatment. When Headmaster Dumbledore and Dean Snape were talking about Moon in the headmaster's office, the little wizard had already come to the vicinity of the auditorium. When passing by the stairs next to the Herb Club, Moon stood there and observed carefully. The troll just fell down after being hit by 9 leg-locking curses. Because the stairs were high and the troll was very tall, the noise it made when it fell down was very loud. More than a dozen hard marble tiles were directly broken, and the troll also left 3 teeth and sticky blood. But now the blood on the ground has been cleaned up, and the tiles have all returned to their original appearance. It is completely impossible to tell that there was a fight here half an hour ago. At this time, the auditorium was full of people, and every little wizard made a cheerful voice. Among them, George and Fred had the loudest voices. Moon heard them talking about Charlie. In Romania, it takes 7 or 8 wizards to cast spells at the same time to subdue a crazy fire dragon. Yes, Charlie gave us an experiment after he came back. In such a chaotic scene, the door of the auditorium opened again. All the noises at the dinner stopped as if they had heard an order. Hundreds of eyes looked at the little wizard standing under the huge wooden door of the hall. Moon originally wanted to walk to the Gryffindor table alone while everyone was cheering. He didn't want to attract any attention. But the friction and creaking sound of the door opening still made everyone notice him. If it were in normal times, a first-year little wizard walking into the hall would not attract any attention. But tonight, everyone knew that only one little wizard would be late. The mysterious little wizard who was called away by Dumbledore, suspected of subduing the troll and saving the dinner. The scene that Moon saw tonight was actually enough for him to remember. First, the troll's stick almost had him, and now he was facing the gaze of so many people. Especially the latter, he had never experienced it before. This made him stand there and didn't know which leg to take. He now finally understood the scene that Harry faced at the start of term dinner. This feeling is really bad. Tada! Someone knocked the spoon to the floor, breaking the temporary silence, and then Professor McGonagall stood up directly on the professor's table. Okay, students, the dinner is still going on, everyone can enjoy it. McGonagall made a gesture to Moon in the distance to invite him to take a seat. Seeing that some young wizards had withdrawn their gazes, Moon quickly ran to the long table. Here, there's a seat for you, Harry greeted Moon at this time, and then pointed to an empty seat next to him. Thank you. After Moon sat down, he looked at him with a smile. It's okay, in fact, you just need to get more familiar with this situation. Harry was very happy because he found that he was finally no longer the only special person. In fact, I don't like this situation of being noticed by everyone. Okay, Moon, just like Harry said, you can slowly get used to these, and tell us what happened just now. Moon wanted to explain, but Ron, who was sitting next to him, couldn't wait to get the first-hand information. After Ron finished asking, Moon found that Neville, Seamus, and even the senior students sitting far away pricked up their ears. Well, actually I was taking care of the dragon's blood grass. In order to satisfy everyone's curiosity, Moon had to repeat in detail what happened tonight. That guy should be very big, right? Ron, who had never really seen a troll, was very curious. About 12 feet, it should be able to reach the roof of the classroom. Its big wooden stick was less than an inch away from the tip of your nose. Yes, I felt the strong wind brought by the wooden stick at that time. Well done. The owner of the 6-time champion, it is worth it for us to give you the ultimate secret of the leg-locking curse. George and Fred had come behind Moon without knowing when, and they also heard the whole story. Look, friends, we have long announced that the small evil curse is the most powerful spell in the wizarding world. With Moon's evidence, the twins immediately preached their unique strange ideas to everyone around them. And those who originally sneered at them now began to agree. Even those who had only a vague understanding of the lesser curses were ready to learn this lesser curse. For example, Seamus, Neville, Lavender, and Paddle, who had studied lesser curses with Moon 3 weeks ago. They now looked at the original lesser curse instructor, Ron. The twins were surrounded by more people, so the first-year students could only look at Ron. Seeing so many people asking questions, Ron, who had just been listening to the story, smiled with satisfaction. The people surrounding Moon slowly dispersed, and he had time to eat the Halloween food. However, he had just taken 2 bites when Hermione suddenly came over. Thank you. Moon was a little confused by the sudden thank you, as he didn't remember helping the other person. Actually, I was on the 2nd floor at the time. After hearing Hermione's explanation, Moon realized that it was no wonder that the first person he saw after solving the troll was Hermione. You're welcome. Actually, I just wanted to ask the professor to deal with it, but I sneezed, which attracted the attention of that big guy. Moon had just explained and Hermione wanted to say something, when Cedric came over. Are you okay, Moon? Oh, it's okay, Senior, that's good. Professor Sprout was worried about you and asked me to come over to see you. After listening to Cedric, Moon turned his head and looked at Sprout, who was sitting at the professor's desk. The professor, who was still wearing patched clothes at the dinner, was holding a drink and smiling at him. Seeing this scene, Moon just nodded to show the other party that nothing was wrong. There are also several seniors in the club. They have been discussing you just now. Bernard even wanted to use the spore powder of sleeping fungi to relieve your nervous mood. Hearing Cedric say this, Moon smiled slightly. Don't worry, I'm fine. After Moon repeatedly assured him, Cedric returned to the Hufflepuff table. Is the atmosphere in the Herb Club so good? Seeing Cedric leave, Hermione asked. Yes, everyone cares about me usually. They even tell me about their research topics in order to help me find a research direction. Hearing Moon say this, Hermione suddenly felt that it would be nice to find a group of people with common aspirations to be friends. The theme of Halloween is originally linked to horror and trick-or-treating. Especially with the troll incident, the little wizards felt something more exciting at the dinner. However, this year's Halloween, in addition to the troll, Moon unsurprisingly became the center of everyone's conversation. Even the Slytherin students who disliked Gryffindor the most were the same. Someone must have helped him, otherwise how could he do it? That's right, even Quirrell fainted. How could he, a freshman, do it? Moon's name did not appear on the Slytherin long table, and a simple he would let everyone know who it was. I ask all the little wizards to read, vote for the monthly ticket, and recommend a ticket. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69, Bengbeng's Wish. Because of the troll incident tonight, the Halloween dinner lasted for a long time. The dinner ended at midnight until the professors had to urge the students to leave. The first-year students who returned to the dormitory were still very excited because this was a festival for everyone to spend after coming to school. Especially Ron. Many people asked him about the small evil curse at the dinner table. Even on the way back, 2 girls surrounded him and asked for specific details, which gave him a great sense of satisfaction. Moon also received a lot of attention, but George and Fred were always standing around him, and everyone's attention was always unconsciously attracted to the twins. Moon now also likes to stay with these 2 red-haired wheel-eyes very much, because they always bring laughter and can also make people pay less attention to him. After returning to the dormitory, Moon had not yet laid down, and Bengbeng had already crawled out of the tree nest. Shiji, why do you smell like other animals? Other animals? Do you mean trolls? Moon subconsciously smelled his clothes, and now there was only some food aroma left on them. Chirp, it's the smell of a bird. Bird? Oh, I saw a phoenix today. Chirp, really? Can I see it? I'm afraid. Moon often talks to his pet in the dormitory, which is not a rare thing in the eyes of his roommates. However, when Moon said phoenix, it still attracted the attention of the little wizards. Moon, did you see the fire phoenix? Fox, Ron was still immersed in the joy of being a little curse instructor. When he heard Moon talking, he sat up from the bed. Yes, that big bird is so beautiful, Moon said, and suddenly turned to look at Ron. Ron, do you know how to see the phoenix? Haven't you seen it? Harry got up from the bed at this time and looked at Moon. It's Bong Bong, it wants to see it. Oh, okay. Harry knew very well that Moon cared about his pet very much. As long as Bong Bong asked anything, Moon would generally satisfy it. As the pet with the highest status in the dormitory, Boom not only has his own exclusive room, bed, toys, and tableware, but also Moon rewards him with some coins every once in a while. Harry has never seen this kind of treatment in other pets. Even Dudley's Aunt Marge Dursley's dog Lippy and the neighbor Mrs. Fig's cat don't have this kind of treatment. Not to mention Ron's mouse and Neville's toad. In Harry's opinion, Boom has completely exceeded the boundaries of a pet. It lives better than ordinary wizards. After Ron heard that Boom wanted to see the phoenix, he thought about it and immediately thought of something. It's not easy to see Dumbledore. His phoenix is even harder to see than his. Ron paused deliberately, and when everyone's eyes were looking at him, he coughed and continued. But the magic world is not actually the only phoenix. Fox, are there others? I always thought it was very rare, Harry said with some surprise. Of course, the phoenix is rare, but there should still be some in the wild, but as far as I know, there are only 2 tamed ones. One is Fox, of the Dumbledore family, and the other is Sparks, the mascot of the New Zealand Quidditch team. Ron not only knows more about the magic world than his classmates, but also loves Quidditch even more. So when Moon encounters common sense questions about the magic world that he doesn't know, he will ask Ron for answers. Quidditch team. Harry immediately became excited when he heard the name of Quidditch. Yes, it's the Metallurgian team. It is said that the Phoenix will come out every time the Quidditch World Cup is held. I remember the next World Cup will be in 1994. Seamus also joined the discussion at this time. That's right, so if Bong wants to see the Phoenix, the best opportunity will be at the Quidditch World Cup. After listening to Ron's description, Moon told Bong a specific time. But the little guy didn't seem to be able to accept seeing the Phoenix 3 years later. Even though Moon repeatedly promised to take it to see it, Bong finally returned to the tree nest ruthlessly. By the way, Moon, you can really consider becoming a chaser for the Gryffindor team. Just because you can hit the troll, believe me, you can do it. Ron had persuaded Moon several times to participate in the Quidditch selection in the 2nd grade. However, Moon had no idea about this. His study time was already very tight, and he was very familiar with Harry's training situation. Playing Quidditch. In his opinion, it would be better to practice more spells or read more books. By the way, you keep talking about chasers. If I can hit accurately, shouldn't I be a beater? Moon did not directly reject Ron's proposal, but asked a question in his heart. However, Ron did not answer this question, and Harry could not wait to take over the conversation. Actually, both are fine. Chasers score goals by hitting the ball, while beaters are responsible for hitting the ball out to hit people and protect team members. Harry, who had participated in more than a dozen training sessions, explained it clearly in just one simple sentence. And Harry knew very well why Ron did not recommend Moon to be a beater, because his twin brothers were the two beaters of the Gryffindor team. Moon didn't spend his time on Quidditch. Instead, after lying down, he remembered that he had applied for a classroom. By the way, I asked Dumbledore for a classroom to practice spells. Are you interested? Independent classroom. Wow. Really? Ron, who is about to go to sleep, sat up again. Yes, Dumbledore said, it's on the second floor, next to the school infirmary. I'm going to go. The lounge is too messy. It disturbs my chess game. I'll go too. I'll go after I finish Quidditch training. The roommates were very supportive, which made Moon very happy. By the way, I have to remind you that Dumbledore said he will arrange for Filch to watch over the whole time. Forget it. Hearing Filch's name, Ron immediately took back what he had just said. He had been disgusted with Filch since the beginning of the school year. Then I won't go either, Seamus' voice came. Neville stuttered. It's okay, don't be hard on yourself. The classrooms are all there anyway. If you want to go, you can go by yourself. Chirp. Moon was just about to persuade everyone not to be hard on themselves when Bengbeng, who had hidden in the tree den, crawled out. You want to go? Chirp. Yes, I want to see Norris. Mrs. Norris was Filch's Maine Coon cat. Moon knew that Bengbeng had a good relationship with her, so he agreed. Okay, I'll take you with me tomorrow. After getting Moon's assurance, Bengbeng happily returned to the tree den to rest. It was also after the little wizards rested that Professor McGonagall received a message from Fawkes and came to the principal's office. Please read this, the little wizards. And give monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. Chapter 70 Dumbledore's Conjecture. The Phoenix chose the most outstanding wizard in the Dumbledore family, Albus, the headmaster of Hogwarts. So when she saw Fawkes standing on the windowsill, McGonagall knew that it was Dumbledore who was looking for her. It just so happened that she also had a lot of questions to ask him. Albus, is that thing okay? As soon as she walked up the spiral staircase, McGonagall saw Dumbledore feeding an unknown berry to the Phoenix. Oh, it's okay for now, but I called you here for this. Dumbledore stopped feeding the Phoenix and turned to look at his assistant. Severus is very suspicious of Quirrellness, and suggested that I strengthen the protective power of the Philosopher's Stone. Quirrell, is that so? This child is indeed a little strange. Logically speaking, even if he is frightened by a vampire, he shouldn't be like this. McGonagall sighed, then recalled something and continued to speak. You didn't go to the faculty cafeteria yesterday. The pungent smell of garlic made it impossible to eat. Really? I remember that he rarely went to the faculty cafeteria. Yes, that's why I remember it so clearly. Well, it seems necessary to let Pomfrey think of a way to help this child. McGonagall didn't know what Dumbledore thought of Quirrell. Anyway, as the deputy headmaster, she was very uncomfortable with him teaching students magic with garlic that had no effect, especially teaching the defense against the dark arts class. Quirrell should indeed stay in the school infirmary for a while, but the protection of the Philosopher's Stone also needs to be strengthened. Do you have any suggestions in this regard? Dumbledore was the leader of the whole thing, so McGonagall asked him first. Oh, your mechanisms are actually very cleverly designed, and it is unlikely to be remade, so I wonder if you can increase the difficulty of passing the level, or make it more complicated. After listening to Dumbledore, McGonagall pondered for a while. McGonagall was very confident about the wizard chess level she set up herself. Although it is difficult to increase the difficulty now, there is a way, so she agreed after a little thought. Okay, as for the levels of Pomona and Filius, I will inform the two professors. Well, then I'm relieved. I will also find something as the last level after the holiday. Hearing that Dumbledore was going to take action, McGonagall was slightly relieved at this time. To be honest, the professors' levels are indeed very good, but they can only deal with some ordinary dark wizards. Although there is no news about that person yet, if he is really coming, with his intelligence, he will definitely find the flaws in the level. Fortunately, Dumbledore is also going to set up a level now. As the only person who can make the other party afraid, only the headmaster sets up a level, and McGonagall thinks this is a real protection. When thinking of the level, McGonagall unconsciously thinks of the level that ran out tonight. What do you think about the troll, Albus? You want to ask Mr. Scarlett, right? Dumbledore smiled knowingly. Yes, yesterday Filius told me that Mr. Scarlett has a talent for dueling. I didn't believe it at the time, but tonight his leg-locking curse was simply Simply, just like an excellent orar. Yes, that's right. McGonagall originally wanted to say that Moon was like a wizard with combat experience, but thinking that in the British wizarding world, only the outstanding members of the Aurors have such abilities, she agreed with Dumbledore's statement. Yes, Mr. Scarlet's little evil curse is fast and accurate, but you and Phileas are actually wrong about this. Huh? What did you guess wrong? McGonagall asked somewhat confusedly. Mr. Scarlet's mastery is not dueling skills, but a combat skill that has been baptized by war. Combat skills? How is that possible? After hearing what Dumbledore said, McGonagall was the first to doubt. In her opinion, Moon was at most an 11-year-old wizard with a talent for spells. How could he have been baptized by war? However, Dumbledore had experienced 2 wizard wars. Thinking of this, McGonagall couldn't help but doubt herself. Maybe he didn't experience the war, but the person who taught him these things must be a veteran warrior. Dumbledore was very sure of his guess. He had also watched the underground wizard duel competition. Most of the people there used skills to find the opponent's weaknesses, and then they could defeat the opponent unexpectedly. Most of the winners of this kind of competition have a very clear understanding of themselves. Knowing their own strengths, and being good at finding the opponent's weaknesses during the game, they can easily win. As for Moon, although he only saw this first-year wizard cast a spell, but that kind of quick, decisive, and all-out determination is completely different from a duel. But as far as I know, he is an orphan. As soon as McGonagall said this, he immediately remembered the strange reactions of the Pen of Acceptance and the Book of Admission. If there is nothing wrong with these 2 magic items in the school, then Moon's identity is very suspicious. Thinking of this, McGonagall couldn't help but worry. He lives in the dormitory now. Albus, do you think he will be? Don't scare yourself, Minerva. As for Mr. Scarlet's identity, we will slowly figure it out. Now you just need to look after his spell training room when you are free. Free? How can I be free? McGonagall was about to refute, and caught the words in Dumbledore's words. Spell training room? What is this? Why haven't I heard of it? Oh, I forgot to inform you. I promised to grant Mr. Scarlet a classroom for him to train spells. The location is on the far right of the corridor on the 2nd floor. A first-year student. How many spells has he learned? And he wants. McGonagall was originally angry because Dumbledore asked you if he was free. Now that she heard that Dumbledore had placed this classroom on the 2nd floor, she knew the intention of the headmaster. But just when she was about to refute, she remembered the leg-locking curse that Moon had cast behind her. Okay, I will take the time to take a look. Seeing that McGonagall agreed, Dumbledore smiled. Don't worry, I've asked Filch to be the temporary guard of this classroom, so I shouldn't have to trouble you normally. After getting Dumbledore's assurance, McGonagall sighed helplessly and left the headmaster's office. Not long after she left, Fawkes pecked Dumbledore's hand twice with his sharp beak. Why, Fawkes, did you also find something unusual about that boy? The Phoenix chirped, then stepped back. He just finished making the wand, and he probably wants your feathers, not to hurt you. After hearing what Dumbledore said, Fawkes actually tilted his head and thought for a moment. It has lived for many years. Even longer than the white-haired old man in front of it. But it was sure of the look in the boy's eyes. That was definitely the first time it had seen him in so many years. Asking the little wizards to read, vote for the monthly ticket, and recommend a ticket. Chapter 71 Snape's Attitude. The day after Halloween, all the little wizards were still immersed in the atmosphere of the joyful holiday dinner yesterday. There was only one exception. Moon got up early as usual and went to the common room alone. Because Professor McGonagall did not allow spells to be practiced in the common room, Moon planned to spend all his morning time reading The Secret of Spells, How to Transform Spells. The content of this book is very basic magic knowledge, but it is also very complicated. The author of the book, Balfour Bran, divides spells into 4 parts: spells, gestures, media, and targets. In the catalogue of spells, there are 5 sections: syllables, vocabulary, rhythm, and additional words. The content of the spells alone is actually equivalent to an ordinary big book. Moon was not intimidated by the thickness of the book. When he had just read 1/3 of the content about syllables in the first section, his roommates got up one after another. I really hope today is Saturday. Ron, who had not woken up yet, walked to the common room in a daze. Harry followed him, his eyes also seemed to be still asleep. Well, if you don't wake up, Snape will call the roll in the potions class. Seeing that his 2 good friends were not in high spirits, Moon directly made a harsh prediction that was unique to Friday, 2 consecutive potions classes. This sentence is very effective for dealing with the little lion who has not woken up yet. Sure enough, after hearing Snape's name, not only Harry and Ron, but also Neville, who had just walked down the stairs, took a breath unconsciously. The layout of the hall in the morning had long returned to its usual appearance, and even the smell of various foods mixed together last night had dissipated. There was finally no pumpkin on the table. Ron directly took a bowl of Hagrid's pie and started eating, and Harry also picked up a piece of meat pie. After Neville talked to Hermione for a while, the little witch found Moon. I heard that Dumbledore agreed to your application for a classroom. Yes, Moon also took a bite of the pie and answered. Then can I go with you? Of course. Moon regretted it after blurting it out. On Monday, Moon told Hermione how long his spells would last. If she went to the spell practice classroom now, she would definitely not be able to hide it. However, this idea only flashed through Moon's mind. After the troll incident, he must have been exposed long ago. After finishing their meal quickly, several people rushed to the potion classroom in the basement. Professor Snape's leg was lame, and Moon knew about it last night. He didn't think it was something worth showing off, so he didn't tell anyone. But there were still many people who thought differently from him. After Snape changed from walking in class with a breeze to limping now, Harry and Ron became very happy. Moon could even see the 2 people sitting in the front row shrugging their shoulders. Harry Potter, something happened to make you happy. If you don't follow the classroom rules, you will be deducted 1 point, and you, Weasley, the same. Snape's 2 words made the 2 little wizards in the front row instantly quiet like statues. Malfoy, who was sitting on the far left, showed a smug smile on his face. But Snape obviously thought that this was not enough. After punishing Harry, he set his sights on Moon behind him. Mr. Scarlett, I heard that you have an extraordinary talent in spells. So how should you cast the stirring charm for making potions? This is a question that exceeds the first-year curriculum. Because making potions is the most difficult and complicated course among the existing subjects. So the first-year courses are mostly about learning some simple introductory potions. When making these potions, you only need to stir the crucible manually. As for the potions that need to be made with a stirring charm, this is the content of the third-year potion curriculum. Moon did not expect that Snape would ask him this question. He did not prepare for it. But Moon was not afraid. He stood up and answered loudly. I can't, Professor. Moon's voice was too loud, and Snape, who was waiting for the answer, leaned back unconsciously. Even Neville, who was sitting next to Moon, was startled. Can't? Is there anything to be proud of? Snape had actually prepared the next spell question long ago. But seeing Moon being so honest, he realized that he couldn't humiliate the little lion at all, so he could only announce the start of today's potion making. After the morning class ended, everyone went to lunch together again. On the way, Harry and Ron walked to both sides of Moon. Moon, you did a great job today. That's right. Snape's face hasn't looked good in the past 2 classes. Hearing Ron say this, Moon shook his head. Maybe the professor was injured, so his face looked bad. Moon didn't think it was his fault that Snape looked bad. He just answered the question honestly. It's possible, but no matter. Anyway, seeing Snape injured, I can eat twice as much at noon. Ron sniffed hard after saying this. It seems that there is barbecue at noon today. After saying this, Ron quickly ran to the auditorium. At lunchtime, Filch walked straight into the auditorium. He looked at the long table of Gryffindor and then came to Moon. The classroom that the headmaster promised you is ready. You can go and take a look first. Filch's voice was full of unquestionable attitude, and his eyes were quite unfriendly. But Moon didn't care about these. He had seen many faces uglier than Filch. Wait a minute, I have to go back and pick up Bumblebee. Moon promised Bumblebee to take it to meet his friends, so he couldn't break his promise. Then he told Hermione and ran quickly to the dormitory building. The small classroom on the 2nd floor is next to the school infirmary. When Moon and his group arrived at the door of the classroom, the school doctor Madame Pomfrey came out. It was you who knocked out the troll. Yes, Mom. The appearance of the school doctor did not surprise Moon. When he applied for a classroom from Dumbledore yesterday, the other party had mentioned the role of the school infirmary. Although it is very dangerous, you did a good job. If that big guy was allowed to run around everywhere, my place would definitely be crowded with people a long time ago. Moon didn't know how to reply to the other party. In fact, he didn't want to encounter the troll. Okay kid, I won't bother you anymore. If you have any questions, remember to shout loudly. I'm sure you can hear me. After Madame Pomfrey left, Filch took out the key and opened the wooden door of the classroom. This is a very inconspicuous small classroom with only one window, so the light is dim. After walking in, Moon found that the area here is not large, and there are no tables and chairs inside. There is only a broken pottery figurine in the corner. Moon and Hermione are very curious about the only thing in the classroom. The pottery figurine is a little taller than the two of them, and it is also covered with black paint, with very strange patterns. Moon stared at the facial pattern of the pottery figurine for a while, and he found that the pottery figurine looks like a professor. This is something I confiscated from a group of pranksters. They used this to practice spells at the time, Filch behind him said in a hoarse voice. A group of pranksters, yes, their names are engraved on the bottom of the pottery figurine. Moon turned his head and looked at the bottom of the pottery figurine, where it was written, Predator. Why would Filch help us? After seeing the text, Hermione asked curiously. Moon just smiled and pointed at the two little animals at Filch's feet. Chapter 72, Bengbeng is the Social King. At the entrance of the spell practice classroom, Filch had prepared a chair for himself. He sat at the entrance, watching his pet cat and another mouse-like niffler chatting quietly. Chi, have you seen a phoenix? Meow. Yes, Chi, can you take me to see it? Meow, it's too homely. Last night, Moon knew that Bong was not satisfied with having to wait 3 years to see a phoenix, so he was thinking about when he could take Bong to the principal's office. But now it seems that it is not necessary, because Bong is already looking for a way that belongs to him. What is Bong talking about? Seeing the strange expression on Moon's face, Hermione asked curiously. Oh, Bong seems to be chasing stars. Moon learned the word chasing stars after he came to the UK. At that time, he didn't understand why a group of people would surround a person to ask for an autograph. Now he saw that Bong actually began to seek help from Mrs. Norris in order to see the phoenix. He knew that some people and animals seemed to be born to belong to the middle position of the group. Chasing stars? Who? Hermione was also very curious. Dumbledore's phoenix. Filch doted on his pet cat, so he liked Bung very much. A month ago, he had paid attention to this little guy since he saw Bung bringing fish to Mrs. Norris. He once thought that Mrs. Norris was too lonely in the castle. Now that he had a friend, he also wanted to help Mrs. Norris entertain her well. But Moon didn't have such an idea. He believed in Bung's social skills. In the Gryffindor common room, Moon often saw Bung chatting with other small animals. After seeing Bung able to handle things on his own, Moon and Hermione began their first spell practice. They first moved the clay figurine to the middle of the classroom, and then cast a small spell on the clay figurine according to Filch's instructions. After many experiments, they found that the facial expressions of the clay figurines would change after being cursed. The stronger the power of Moon's spell, the more painful the clay figurine's facial expression would be. The mouth would scream, and tears would fall from the eyes. I really don't know who invented this. It's so imaginative. Moon was very satisfied with this big toy. In his opinion, the clay figurine is much more convenient to cast spells than those small animals. A clay figurine can cast spells continuously, and you can know the effect of the spell by just looking at the other party's face. After the small animals were cursed, they were just fixed in place without any feedback. Moon cast 3 consecutive, leg-locking curse, and the clay figurine's face changed slightly. Hermione also cast, petrification curse, on the clay figurine. From the change in the clay figurine's face, Moon could see that the damage caused by petrification curse was the same as the power of 2, leg-locking curse. However, Hermione's speed of casting spells was too slow. Moon could cast 5, leg-locking curse, in the same time. Seeing that the clay figurine's face was gradually becoming more painful, Hermione stopped casting spells and came to Moon. This clay figurine looks like Professor Snape, Hermione told Moon's initial discovery, but he just nodded. Although he didn't know what hatred this small group called Marauders had with Professor Snape. But none of this mattered to him, especially since the clay figurines were very suitable for practicing spells. He didn't want to give up this magic prop. Maybe they just look alike, Moon responded casually and continued to practice. Hermione thought for a moment, then stood aside and waited. Seeing the clay figurine's expression becoming more and more painful, Hermione felt that it was very much like Snape being bullied by Moon, which gave her a very absurd feeling. It wasn't until Moon was sweating and couldn't cast spells anymore that Hermione came over to help him. Your petrification spell should last more than a minute. Hearing Hermione's question, Moon just looked up and smiled, without any answer. He knew very well that the little witch must have known it a long time ago. Well, since you can't practice anymore, it's time to leave. Filch, who was sitting at the door, had actually been watching Moon all the time. He had seen many students, some were troublemakers and some were good students, but most were ordinary students. But Moon was not like these people. He had a kind of drive that Filch did not understand. This was the quality that Filch saw in those little wizards who wanted to win in the game when he was watching Quidditch. As for ordinary courses like practicing spells, Filch had never seen it in a student. In particular, Moon's drive was even stronger than those students who wanted to catch the quaffle in the game, which made him very confused. Okay, thank you Mr. Filch. Moon did not know how to address him, so he used the word Mr. Hermione was just slightly stunned when she heard this, and nodded to Filch. By the way, you can use this terracotta figurine at will. I have 3 more locked up there. Perhaps Moon's address had some effect, and Filch was actually generous to the little wizard. Thank you, no, and you'd better set a time to come here. I still have a lot of things to do, especially to catch little wizards at night. Hermione curled her lips when she heard this. She felt that Filch had not changed. Moon didn't care. What he needed to do now was to study how to make food bigger, practice spells, and take care of the plants in the club. He planned to study spells after getting up in the morning. He could take care of plants as long as he had time. So he had some time after class in the afternoon, which was very suitable for practicing spells. After thinking about this, Moon looked up at Filch. Then after class in the afternoon, if it's inconvenient for you, I can also get the key myself. No, I'm familiar with the first-year class schedule, you can just come directly then. After Filch said that, he opened the classroom door and motioned the 2 little wizards to come out. Then he locked the door and led Mrs. Norris away. Bengbeng climbed onto Moon's shoulder and said goodbye to his friend. Chi, remember to tell me if you see a phoenix. Meow. Okay. Moon also waved to Mrs. Norris. On the way back to the dormitory, Moon reviewed the spell practice just now. In fact, after fighting with the troll, Moon discovered his shortcomings. That is the mentality problem when facing a battle. Xilin had actually pointed out this problem, but he didn't have the conditions to train Moon at the time. It wasn't until he encountered the troll this time that Moon really felt that the mentality problem had to be solved. If you want to not be afraid or excited during a battle, you must experience enough wars. Only when you are used to it can you become numb. This is what Xilin said after discovering Moon's problem. It's just that if you want to experience war, this condition is not available at any time and place. So Xilin can only take another approach. Train the means of subduing the enemy to become a kind of muscle memory. Only in this way can you ensure your survival first, and then experience the changes in mentality brought about by war. This is Xilin's training requirement for Moon. I asked the little wizards to read it, give monthly tickets, and recommend tickets. Chapter 73 The First Step of Spell Transformation. After returning to the common room from the spell practice classroom, Hermione said hello weakly and left. After seeing Moon's way of training spells, the little witch suddenly wanted to practice in the same way. The result is imaginable. Just casting more than a dozen spells in a row, she now has no energy to read books. Moon has long been accustomed to this high-intensity practice method. Although Moon is very tired now, he finds that his energy recovers faster and faster. When he first started practicing in Xilin, he could only practice 2 full-strength output spells a day, but now he can cast 5 times. After returning from the spell practice classroom, Moon sat on the sofa in the common room for a while, and then took out The Secret of Spells, Methods of Transforming Spells. Now whenever he has time, Moon will study this book. Second section, The Composition and Meaning of Spell Phrases. In the common room after the holiday, Moon should be the only little wizard who is still studying. Although the Halloween dinner is on Thursday night, most of the little wizards are still immersed in the festive atmosphere all day on Friday. Especially George and Fred, they collected a lot of scary gadgets at the dinner. After they were transformed, these gadgets became their accomplices to play pranks on others in the common room. Percy is a very dedicated prefect, and he is now closely monitoring the twins like Mrs. Norris. Ron rarely played wizard chess today, because several junior girls came to him to learn minor jinxes. Especially after Ron said, Moon, who defeated the troll, was the one who learned the minor jinx from me. Some second-year girls also came to him. Harry was originally learning minor jinxes from Ron, but when he saw more and more girls, he left and went to Moon. "Did Filch not catch your mistakes today?" Seeing Moon sitting alone in the corner after returning, Harry asked about the spell practice room. In order to prevent reading serially later, Moon pointed to a line of small words on the book with his finger, and then looked up at Harry. "No." Filch hardly spoke the whole time. "No? How is that possible?" He wanted to find 10,000 mistakes in the students. Harry said what he knew from his own experience, especially the last duel with Malfoy. They were almost caught by Filch. If students were asked to comment on the most unpopular faculty member in Hogwarts, Filch would definitely be the first. Of course, if only Harry was giving the score, Filch would be the second. "I'm telling the truth, we practiced for 2 hours, and he sat at the door for 2 hours. Moon actually understood Harry's thoughts very well. Filch didn't receive such a high-level magic prop as the terracotta figurines. It can be seen that many students must have suffered the same treatment. But Moon was telling the truth, although he knew that Filch did this because of Bung. "Is there anyone else going with you, except for Moon?" Harry didn't think anyone would be interested in the classroom where Filch was. "Yes, Hermione." She went back to rest. Hearing that it was Hermione, Harry immediately understood. This little Gryffindor professor would never admit that someone would surpass her. If she found that someone had this tendency, Hermione would work harder. "By the way, you can actually go and have a look." Filch found a magic figurine. "It looks a lot like..." "Well, never mind. You will definitely be happy when you see it." Moon wanted to say that the figurine looked like Snape, but thought that saying so might cause misunderstanding, so he didn't continue. "Figurine? Used to practice spells, yes, it seems to be able to sense the strength of the spell. The more it cries, the more powerful the spell is." Harry became interested after hearing Moon's description. "Really? Then I'll go tomorrow." Harry's voice rose a lot. "Tomorrow is the weekend, Mr. Filch may have to rest. How about next week?" After Moon and Harry decided on the time, Ron was also attracted by their voices. After letting all the girls practice on their own, he walked to Moon's side. "Such a magical figurine? Then I want to go and see it too." Then Seamus and Neville also agreed to join the tour of the spell practice room next week. On Sunday morning, after 5 consecutive days of reading, Moon finally finished the first chapter of the spell transformation. This chapter introduces the scale, phrases and structure of spells. These are also the 3 most basic components of spells. However, reading these contents does not mean that you have learned them. Moon plans to split his spell for comparative study first, which will make him understand more deeply. As for which spell to try, Moon actually has a plan. Because his research on spell transformation is to find magic that makes plants grow quickly. In view of this, the 3 spells of expansion spell, growth spell, and rapid enlargement have become the reference basis for the transformation spell. On the other hand, compared with growth spell and rapid enlargement, expansion spell is a second-year course content at Hogwarts, which is relatively simple, so Moon chose this spell. The spell of the expansion spell is Ingorgio. This is a spell originated from Latin, and the whole is divided into 3 syllables. Gor, Geo is emphasized on the second syllable Gor. Professor Flitwick had talked about the characteristics of this spell. When it is cast, it will make the object larger, but the enlarged part is not the object itself, but the gap between the structure of the object. The main magic of the spell that causes the object to expand is the second syllable Gor. This word just means expansion and swelling in Latin. Moon wrote down the entire content of the spell, which was a full 50 inches of parchment. This is just the spell part. Looking at the gestures and mediums behind it, Moon knew that this matter might take a long time. After writing the content of the spell, Moon came to the auditorium for dinner. Because it was the weekend, the young wizards did not have to come on time, so the meal time was also extended. However, when Moon had just finished eating and was about to return to the lounge to continue studying the spell, Cedric came over. "Professor Sprout wants to see you." It was the first time for Moon to be called by a professor on the weekend. However, he did not hesitate and followed Cedric directly to the Herb Club classroom. After entering the door, Cedric left directly, leaving only Moon and Sprout in the classroom. "Mr. Scarlett, Cedric came to you because he wants to ask for your help." It was the first time for Moon to encounter a professor asking a student for help. "Professor, just give me your instructions." "Oh, actually I don't need you to do anything. I just hope to borrow your growth potion, after Moon cultivated a magical tree. He locked this potion in a suitcase under the bed. When Moon got the potion, there were 15 drops in it, and now there are 6 drops left. Yes, I have a bigger one. Oh, Christmas cactus, and now I need to make it grow faster. Please read it, pass the monthly ticket, and recommend it to the little wizards. Chapter 74 Transferring Family Members. The Christmas cactus is just an ordinary herb, and there is no way to absorb the growth potion. This is something Moon knew a long time ago, but Professor Sprout didn't want to say more, so he didn't ask more. Finally, at Sprout's request, Moon took out 3 drops of growth potion. This episode did not disrupt Moon's research on the transformation spell until he went to bed early at night and prepared to return to Xilin for devil training. After returning to the cabin, the devil training that was waiting had not yet arrived. A cold dagger was immediately pressed against Moon's neck. "It's me," Moon said a word, and the dagger slowly moved away from the skin. "Your way of learning magic is too unsafe," Xilin's rough voice sounded in the dark night. "If you have to leave in this way in the future, you must put yourself in a safe place, okay?" After hearing Moon's agreement, Xilin put the dagger back into the scabbard, lay down and fell asleep. "I actually met an enemy when I was studying magic." The next morning, Moon told Xilin about the encounter with a troll at Hogwarts. "I've told you before that the biggest factor that causes novices to die on the battlefield is an unstable mentality." After listening to Moon's experience, Xilin was surprised at first. He originally thought that Moon was summoned by a powerful magician to be trained. But he didn't expect that he would encounter danger like this, which made him vaguely worried about what Moon would encounter in another world. "If you want to overcome this mental problem, you must see blood." After thinking for a while, Xilin made a quick judgment. He didn't think he could protect Moon for a lifetime, so no matter where he was, he had to let Moon grow into a qualified warrior to maximize his survival. "See blood?" Moon was a little surprised. "That's right, but these small animals are not suitable either. Human blood is best." Hearing the word human blood, Moon's breathing tightened unconsciously. He used to hunt hazel grouse and hares with a slingshot, and sometimes helped Aunt Daisy deal with the bodies of these small animals. But human blood, he had never thought about it. Although Xilin said it, it was unlikely for him to get human blood now. If the war really reached Xilin, he might be able to capture 1 or 2 prisoners for Moon to practice with. But it was obviously impossible now. So Xilin could only let Moon slaughter some small animals that liked to play dead after practicing magic. But this was not very effective. It was not until the 3rd day after returning to Xilin that Neil brought new news about the war. Neil actually had another child above his cousin Sophia, Scarlett. This boy was 1 year younger than Moon. When he was 8 years old, he was sent to the military academy in the federal capital Xilin City to study. Now he is 10 years old and should be a 3rd-year student in the Army Preparatory Department of the military academy. Jay sent a letter saying that all students above the 5th grade of the military academy will be assigned to the reserve. When Neil came to the hazelnut forest with a letter, his face was very bad. In fact, after the autumn harvest, Neil got the news that the war was coming, which was what Jay asked from school. At that time, he planned to let Jay go home first and go to school after the war was over. But at that time, the military academy had implemented a fully closed management, prohibiting any students from leaving. Especially some military children. After Moon sent back the news of the appearance of Night Owl, Neil wrote another letter to Jay, telling him to be careful. Students of the military academy are usually reserve forces and are rarely assigned to the front line, so Neil, don't worry. After reading the letter, Xilin patted Neil's shoulder to comfort him. I know, and Jay is still young, and there are still 2 years before the 5th grade, that's right, so you should be more concerned about the other thing Jay sent back." Xilin handed the letter to Moon again. Students of the military academy are very valuable. After graduation, they will be the grassroots commanders of the army, but now they are arranged to join the army in advance, which only means that the Federation believes that the current situation is very critical. While Xilin was analyzing the matter, Moon also roughly read the contents of the letter. Jay wrote a sentence at the end of the letter. There's news that the Manila Empire's conquest of the North is just a cover. Yes, the Manila Empire announced 3 years ago that it would conquer the barbarians in the North, and it was at that time that they began to prepare for war. Now it seems that their initial target is us. 3 years of preparation is enough for an empire to launch a war to destroy another country. especially since the Graysian Federation is far from being the opponent of the Manila Empire. It seems that this war is destined to have only one result from the beginning. After Xilin finished speaking, Neil took the letter and read the last content. He was just too worried about his son's safety just now, and only glanced at the content of the letter. But the Federation must have made preparations, yes, but this preparation is far less than the other parties. At this point, Xilin suddenly remembered the spellcaster he protected back then. The other party is now in a very high position and must know more information. But knowing this information is enough for Xilin. After analyzing the current situation, Xilin made a quick judgment. If the enemy is really so well prepared, then it will be difficult to hold the Snow Eagle Mountain defense line. A big city like Leoyan City may be able to withstand the first wave of attacks, but a small city like Xilin may not be able to. Xilin had never attended a military academy, and all his inferences were based on past experience. So we'd better move our families to a safe place first, and then find the main force, or use the familiar geographical environment to deal with the enemy. Transfer, that's right. If you want the soldiers to really contribute, you must protect their loved ones, but now the Federation may not have the power to do this, so we can only do it ourselves. After listening to Xilin's analysis, Neil was silent for a while and looked at the other party. I received a call-up order from the Xilin sheriff last night to serve as the captain of the newly formed militia guard. If you really want to transfer your family, you still need to do it. In fact, when Neil received the call-up order, he didn't think the situation was so bad. Now after Xilin's analysis, he knew that transfer might be right. Don't worry, I know a merchant captain named Gold at the dock. I can ask him to send his family to the Vina Islands for temporary shelter. It shouldn't be a problem. Then when are we leaving? That guy may not have returned yet. But we'd better get there in advance, otherwise the city will be closed if the situation changes, and many people will escape at that time. Anyway, I will contact him as soon as possible, preferably within 7 days. Okay, I'll go back now and let everyone prepare. With Xilin's assurance, Neil left in a hurry. However, not long after he left, Brad also sneaked into the hazelnut forest, asking for follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from Little Wizards. Chapter 75, Night Owl, comes. In fact, after Xilin said that he would take people out to sea, Moon had already thought of informing his only friend in Xilin. Now that Brad came by himself, it saved him some effort. But before Moon asked to leave Xilin, Brad said something unexpected. Quick, take it. As soon as he entered the cabin, Brad took out a thick gray paper file bag from his clothes. After Moon took it without knowing why, he took a look at the words on it. Xilin Town Birth Population Record 121 volumes. This is a record of Xilin population births recorded in the monastery. Moon did not open the folder, but looked at Brad curiously. What are you doing with this? Brad, who had just run in and was still out of breath, said slowly after drinking a sip of water. Someone came to the monastery to find someone, and then Brother Layton asked people to find all the birth certificates that meet the requirements. If you want to prove whether a person is from Xilin Town, the most reasonable way is to go to the monastery to check the person's identity record, delivery record and basic information. These things are recorded in the monastery when a person is born, and the entire Gracia Federation is the same. Looking for someone? What kind of person? Age over 10 and under 15, male, black hair and blue eyes, tall. After listening to the conditions Brad said, Moon felt that he could find hundreds of people in Xilin. But the next condition made him feel a gust of cold wind blowing. The family should make a living by herding, holding a special wooden stick, and there is a record of herding at night in the northeast of Xilin Town for nearly a month. Brad became more and more excited as he spoke, and after saying the last condition, he swallowed his saliva unconsciously. Moon now finally understood why Brad was so excited. There are many people who make a living by herding in Xilin, but there are almost no people who herd with the wooden sticks, because people who drive livestock generally use shovels or whips. If the condition of herding at night is added, and it is still within a month, the scope will be even smaller. Especially now that most people in Xilin know that the war is coming, almost no herders will go that far. Moon knew that this was the one who came to find him. Apart from his family, the only people who knew that he had a small wooden stick in his hand were Xilin and Brad. Of course, there was also the night owl who fainted that night. It seems that you have left yourself a fatal tale. Xilin also guessed the other party's identity at this time, and his expression unconsciously became serious. Moon opened the file bag that Brad brought at this time, and then found his identity certificate in it. That person has been hiding in the house since he entered the monastery. I was arranged by Brother Lydon to check these documents because I can read, Brad said and looked at Moon anxiously. It was only after I saw your file that I realized that the other party might want to find you, so I ran out under the pretext of going to the toilet. After listening to Brad's explanation, Moon walked over and hugged him. If the person who wanted to find Moon was really the Night Owl, then Brad's risk this time was too great. Thank you, we don't have to say this, but what should we do now? Brad didn't know Xalin's identity, so he kept looking at Moon. After knowing Moon's identity as a spellcaster last time, Brad had a great trust in his good friend. In his opinion, since Moon had the ability to knock out a Night Owl in the cave, he was also able to deal with this Night Owl. However, Moon was very clear about his own abilities. He was able to deal with the Night Owl by surprise, and that special staff magic. Now the opponent was obviously well prepared, and also took the small wooden stick into consideration. This put Moon in a passive position. However, they also had a trump card of their own. Thinking of this, Moon turned his head and looked at Xilin on the side. Did you disagree with my idea at that time? Now you know the importance of finishing off the enemy. After Xilin came to Xilin, Moon talked about the matter of dealing with the Night Owl that night. At that time, he thought that Moon should find a way to silence him, even if it was to push the Night Owl off the cliff. But Moon did not agree with this approach. And now the facts have once again proved that Xilin was right. I will try my best to find a way not to leave a tail in the future, but what should I do now? The emergence of 2 consecutive dangers made Moon's originally too high principles begin to loosen a little. Now, of course, we are ready to fight, Xilin said as he snatched the ID from Moon's hand and threw it directly into the fire. With the addition of flammable materials, the flames rose high. Moon hadn't reacted yet, and Zara continued to ask, "Is there another copy at Neil's house?" Yes, Moon answered blankly. "Remember to burn that one too." "Why?" "That's my ID. Remember, kid, your identity record is a disaster now, and in the future, you won't need a piece of paper to prove your identity." Moon didn't understand why he wouldn't need an ID in the future, but he didn't stop Xilin from doing it. After the ID was burned, Xilin went from his previous lazy state to fighting mode. That afternoon, he bought a lot of things from the street and prepared to set traps in the hazelnut forest. Dig the pit, put branches on it, and leave a bigger gap. The nails should be hidden in the pit, and there is no need to bury them so deep in the leaves. Moon and Xilin have learned a lot about hunting traps in recent times. But the traps he set today were totally different from his usual work. If it was the old Moon, he would definitely admire the clever design of these traps. But after receiving training from Xilin, he could already find that these traps were full of flaws. "Why do you do this?" "That's the Night Owl." After putting the nails in place, Moon asked the question in his mind. In his opinion, these traps could not cause any harm to the other party. "Yes, I know it's the Night Owl, but he's just looking for you, isn't he?" Hearing Xilin's irresponsible words, Moon was a little surprised. After a month of contact, Moon found that he had a lot of trust in Xilin. Especially after completing the training set by Xilin, he became stronger, which made Moon trust Xilin even more. But now this man who was originally trustworthy actually wanted to leave him alone to deal with the Night Owl. "Don't think about it, kid. The Night Owl who came is likely to be a young master, and I'm old. I definitely can't fight him head-on, so I can only use some tricks," Xilin said as he tied the rope of a trap behind a tree. "Then shouldn't we make these traps better?" "No, the best traps can't hurt Night Owl. The reason for doing this is just to prove that there's only one little boy here who is trying his best." Xilin's idea is very realistic. He knows that Night Owl is very powerful, so he doesn't plan to fight him head-on. Since Night Owl only wants to find Moon now, he can hide in the dark. When Night Owl finds all the traps here, that will be the time when the other party is most relieved. Because for a shepherding child, being able to set up so many small traps is already the greatest ability. And that is the best time for Xilin to take action. Ask the little wizards to read, monthly votes, and recommendation votes. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.